Hey there, everybody. How are you doing? Welcome back again to the Sunday stream. If this is your first time being here, thanks for showing up. On these Sunday streams, we've been doing a Dungeons and Dragons 5e solo adventure featuring Leah, who is our lady wizard, high elf wizard. It's been a lot of fun so far. This is the 6th episode. But if it's your first time showing up, don't worry. You can catch on very quickly. We have not gotten that far actually. We only stream for about 2 hours every Sunday. And so for a solo RPG, we don't get that far ahead. So we're still in our starting area. So if this is your first time showing up, you're not gonna miss a ton of stuff. We have a very specific thing that we're gonna be doing today, which piggybacks a little bit off of what we did 2 episodes back, dealing with the water Myrmidon, the sort of watery elemental creature we've been dealing with. That's was accosting the Split Valley Oasis trading post where we sort of started our adventure. So making a post to Twitter just to wait to see if we get any stragglers kind of showing up. How are you guys doing today? You guys doing all right? We're having a little bit of a cold snap here. I was really feeling it yesterday. I feel better today. Yesterday felt like it got into my bones. It was very cold yesterday. I don't know what that was all about. I thought I was maybe getting sick, but I feel quite better today. So I guess not. Maybe it was just allergies and cold. But how are you guys doing? You guys feeling all right? Yeah. Let's see. Other big things have been kind of going on. Let's see. We played some D&D on Friday. Our game got canceled on Thursday with a different group. So I did an impromptu stream there where we did a little dungeon building, and that was a lot of fun. Kind of converting the idea of a dungeon adventure that I had from many years ago and sort of pulling it up into 5e. So we may work on that again next time that I have some a D&D game canceled or I have some sort of impromptu time. And the best way to sort of catch those streams if you're interested in sort of like how to build dungeons or be a dungeon master and that sort of stuff is to obviously follow, and then you'll get the notifications for the channel. You can also follow me on Twitter. I try to post out every time that post a tweet every time that I'm going to go live. So you can catch it there as well. If you're interested in more sort of like Dungeons and Dragons specific or RPG really specific information, advice, that sort of stuff, you can check out the website below. I've been doing a blog on D&D and other tabletop RPGs for a little over a decade, so it's got a lot of good information. So if you're interested in that, you can jump on there. And we have a world building process thing that I worked on a little bit earlier this weekend, where we're sort of like building a full fantasy world from scratch. And I was working on, we were doing a zoom in on sort of a region map and doing the hex mapping for that, which you'll see some of those things once we jump over to the map that we have for our local area and the solo adventure. You can see some of the same processes in use, just in a much smaller form factor. Let's see what else we have to talk about before we get started, just to see if we have some extra people, some stragglers rolling in. I think that's really about it. Well, I could go over a recap of what we did last time. So last time, so we'd started with Leah being a level 0 character. So she wasn't even a first level, so she wasn't actually a wizard yet. She was just, she was a researcher, a sage, sort of a disgraced academic. And she's been embroiled in some things have come up about her past research that she's trying to get a handle on, trying to figure out what's going on with that, because there's sort of a mysterious death that kind of surrounds that. and so they're trying to get to that, trying to understand that. But in the last episode, she's basically using her resources to try to train up so she can actually become sort of that first level wizard, so she can actually kind of do the adventuring thing on her own. Because it seems like a lot of what she's got to kind of pulled into here requires more sort of action than research, which is sort of her background. So she's got a very knowledgeable understanding of elementals and primordials, because that's sort of the basis of her research. But now dealing with the, like I said earlier, the water Myrmidon, which is a water elemental, it's much different from reading about creatures to having to sort of like deal with them face to face, especially getting into like a fight. And so she's sort of taken about a week to sort of take her theoretical knowledge and move it over to practical knowledge. And so at the end of this week, which we're not quite at the end of, we're one day shy of that. So I'm going to give her basically everything that she would have as a wizard except for her familiar. So she has the Find Familiar spell, which would give her a familiar. But I'm going to say that since she hasn't had that last day to sort of like finish her leveling up to level 1, that she won't have the familiar yet, but she's going to have basically everything else that she needs to be a level 1 wizard. While she was doing that studying, their previous employer hired Ott, which is one of her companions, who is a gnoll, so a giant hyena lady, and who's sort of a scout and a guide. Hired her to sort of scout out this foreign occupation camp that showed up a few weeks ago on the southern shore of the oasis. And then misadventures happened. So Ott went out there. She had to take this child. The child almost got killed by quippers, which are sort of fantasy piranha. Almost got killed by those. Was able to get in there and pulled it up on shore, and was able to sort of like get a read on everything, and ended up coming back without too much hesitation. Luckily, they were able to sort of talk down everybody, because she had basically, from the locals' perspective, she had basically kidnapped this kid, because nobody knew where this kid went. Because the kid was watching the boat, and then she hired the kid. She wanted to use the kid's boat, and the kid was like, "No, I'm told that I have to stay with the boat." So she took the kid and the boat of his own, the kid of their own free will, right? She didn't actually kidnap them, but you know, without that knowledge, the perspective was from the town that she had kidnapped this kid. But then she came back, and they had an explanation, kind of talked it out, and kind of smoothed everything over. So luckily, she's not under arrest or had to pay a fine or anything, but that is sort of where things are. Now, in that intervening time, Leah, who's again our high elf wizard, was approached by the leader of the foreign occupation camp, who was seeking out another NPC that we had talked about in previous sessions, called Norkruuth, which is a slaver that's sort of in the area that they've had a few conversations with at this point. And Norkruuth was basically hired originally to capture the water Myrmidon and transfer it to our halfling, whose name is... I came up with a name for this guy. Or this lady, actually. Female. No, it's a man, sorry. Gimble. Who was supposed to sort of capture the water Myrmidon and give it to Gimble, who's sort of a bigger time slaver and noble, who's sort of like taking these sort of creatures and using them and other monsters that they can find and sort of use them and sell them to arenas for arena games and things like that. Not happy with Norkruuth's inability to take care of the job, Gimble went straight to the source, went to Leah, who's supposed to be the expert in the area on elementals and primordials, especially because Omer, which is the person who had been sort of dealing with the elemental run rampant in this area, it wasn't until Leah and Ott showed up that was actually dealt with. And so everybody kind of sees Leah specifically as being the person who's able to handle the elemental. So Gimble kind of went straight to the source there and hired her to sort of go out to deal with the Myrmidon. And again, they're being paid by Ott and Leah are being paid by Akari, which is the plantation owner in the area. Because the plantation owner wants the foreign occupation people gone. They're buying rice from his plantation, but he's afraid that, once they run out of money, they're just going to take what rice he has, and he's not going to be able to fight them off because there's a large band of them. I think there's almost 30 of them, and he's like, I can't fight them off, so I need you to sort of get them to go away. And so they're kind of double dipping here as far as adventures are concerned to get paid to sort of move this group of people away, these slavers away, as well as dealing with on their end trying to capture the water elemental. And that's sort of where we've kind of gotten to. So we kind of realized at the end of the last session that it was basically going to be a three-way scramble, because you've got Leah and Gimble's crew that are going after the Myrmidon. You have Ott, who has been recruited by Norkruuth to take care of that, and so they're making a scramble because Norkruuth's trying to get there first so he can actually sell it to Gimble. And then we have Omer, and he's hired some sort of local people to help him, and Omer specifically does not want to. And we have that background again. If you want to catch up with all this, you can check out the YouTube channel, which again is the same as the Twitter down here. It's at Red Dragon Fiend. You can go check out the YouTube channel and catch up with everything we've done so far if you're interested. But Omer specifically is a researcher, and he wants to basically tag the water elemental so he can study it further and try to keep it out of harm's way. He more specifically does not want it captured or killed. And the other two parties are trying to capture it. So we've kind of got these three that are in sort of a scramble to try to find the Myrmidon first, either capture it or tag it and try to push it out of the area, away from danger. And that's sort of where we're going to pick up, really. So I think, without further ado, let's just go ahead and go ahead and hop into it. So let me switch our screen here so you guys can see everything that I'm seeing. There we go. Yeah. All right. There we go. All right. Perfect. Yep. Okay. So let me pull this up first. So as you can see on the left here, I have this Split Valley Oasis sort of hex highlighted. So that's sort of the trading post where we're starting out. For us, it is Spring Maiden 64. So it's almost the end of the month. There's only one day left in the month. So like I said earlier, we have Leah who was doing downtime until tomorrow, so she's going to have everything but her familiar. The other thing that's of note, so they had kind of made all these preparations yesterday, and now they're getting ready this morning to sort of head out to see if they can find the Myrmidon. Because they only have sort of a rough idea of where it is. They know that it's to the southeast somewhere. They think it's a few hours away, maybe a day at most. So they're going to kind of be searching for it. So we're really going to get into some of the hex crawl stuff that we had talked about that we haven't really done so far because we've kind of been sitting in this Split Valley Oasis area. But now we're gonna finish that out as we sort of move over into some of the other hexes, and we'll sort of generate those as we go, as we search for the water elemental. But in town, on the 64th, there is a lot of there are preparations starting to happen around the trading post and all the people there. They're preparing for the High Spring Festival, which is the spring equinox, which is going to happen in a couple of days. So, as they're getting up and they're getting geared up and getting ready to leave, you see that, people are starting to put up, like, banners, and starting to get things ready for the festivities, starting to get things cleared up. There are a lot of people buying gifts and stuff like that. Specifically in the High Spring Festival, there is a lot of emphasis. It's got a very sort of almost Easter kind of feel to it. Like, there's a lot of iconography about rebirth and especially budding romance during that time. So there's a lot of romantic love stuff that kind of goes on. So there are a lot of people that are sort of buying gifts. So it's sort of a mixture sort of between Valentine's Day and Easter. So we have a lot of young people who are sort of like making or buying gifts for people they want to court, and setting up things, lots of spring rebirth, new crops, things like that, which Akari, the plantation owner, is very interested in because they are getting ready to do their spring planting, which is one of the reasons they wanted to take care of the water elemental, which was in the area that was going to be a problem for that. So that's where we're starting at. So Leah sort of hooks up with Gimble in the morning, and he has about 2 dozen people with him. There's like 24 people with him, plus Leah and Gimble himself, and Gimble's imp. He has a little imp familiar with him, and they are going to head out from Split Valley Oasis. Now, of course, we know that the fastest way to get to the southeast, if you look at the map here, we have a bunch of water. So they're sort of loading into a whole bunch of longboats, into skiffs that can hold, 6 to 10 people in them, and sort of rowing across. So we'll do that real quick. We're going to start, and then as we get there, we'll sort of figure out, because we've got to figure out where the Myrmidon is first. Then we're going to have to figure out if anybody beats Leah and Gimble to it. Because everybody's kind of running off at the same time. So I think let's go ahead and just kind of jump right into it. So I think they're going to go here. So I set it up. You'll see down here on the right side. So if you watch sort of the previous episode with Ott, where we talked about sort of the Constitution saving throw levels to determine sort of like how far they can get through hexes. How many hexes they can sort of get through in a day when they're exploring. So every time they move through a hex, they take 1d6, and actually I'll just pull up the rules since we're looking at them. There we go. So we move through the hexes, we try to see if there's an encounter, if we run across one of the points of interest, if there's a point of interest in the area, and then, right, we know that it's to the southeast, so they're probably not going to take time to really, really explore the area, because they're pretty sure the Myrmidon's not here. Obviously, because they kind of moved it out of this immediate area. So let's go ahead. So we'll make the random encounter roll, and then I'll roll for the Constitution. So every time they move into a new hex, they take a 6-sided die, and that sort of bumps up. And then once they reach 12, which is basically what we consider Leah's passive Constitution save, and that's how many hexes she can get through before she herself becomes sort of fatigued from doing it. So first, we got our D12 roll. Let's see if we encounter anything. We rolled an 11, so nothing happens there. Now this doesn't have a POI, so we'll go ahead and roll the 1d20 to see if we come across a POI is just short for point of interest. No point of interest. So nothing happens there. Ooh, but I did roll a 6. So they put Leah, I guess, on one of the oars, and being a wizard, she doesn't have a ton of upper body strength or constitution in general. Actually, her constitution's okay. She has a +2 in constitution. But obviously she was not prepared to be doing a lot of hard labor. So each of these hexes, by the way, represents about an hour of travel. So just FYI, so that's an hour of basically hard rowing in a boat. So then we'll go ahead and go here, and we'll do the same thing. You're right. So I rolled that. So we don't come across any encounter. We do come across a POI though, right? I'm pretty sure. Let's see. No, sorry, no POI. Man, rolling high on that D6 again. Alright, so that's 11. So 2 hours of hard rowing is taking it out of Leah. So then we'll do the third. So it may completely waste her to just get all the way across this oasis, across this lake. Let's see. Because basically once we hit, for those of you that haven't been with us already, once we hit this 12 mark, right here, then Leah has to start making active Constitution saving throws, or else start taking levels of exhaustion, which can only be healed by taking the full night's rest. So basically, either they can push themselves and they'll be more exhausted to get further along, but that comes with all the negatives that come with the exhaustion, which are not great. And you can only heal one level of exhaustion if you rest. So if you go to level 2 exhaustion and then you sleep, you're still back to level 1 exhaustion on the next day, which is not great. But that got us there, so we got one more to get through. Alright, well I rolled a 1 on the D12, which I believe is an encounter. Yep. Alright. So we got an encounter. I'm gonna see if I like any of the encounters. This is my DM's binder. If you watched previously, you know that we've used this a few times. But I like it because I have some pre-made sort of random encounters in here. Most of these are pretty saltwater based. So I think I'm just gonna roll. Let's see what we can get from Kobold. See if we can get something good from there. So, but we are gonna have some sort of encounter. Whoop, that's the wrong thing. There we go. Kobold Fight Club. So we have basically one first level character. Okay. So it's something that should be balanced for one first level character, which doesn't mean that that's all it's going to attack, but rather than trying to run Leah plus Gimble plus like 24 other mercenaries, I'm just going to focus on like what Leah's portion of that fight would be. So let's look at some filters. So we really want something aquatic, but I'd also go coastal. Now basically the way that I set it up for 5e is that I always kind of try to go for a hard encounter. Alright, not really that. 8 frogs. That's funny. But we kind of did quippers already. Oh, mud methods. So if we did some mud methods in the very, very first episode that we did with well, technically it's episode 3, but the first episode of actual play, when we weren't just setting up the characters in the sort of immediate starting area. And these mud methods really rocked Ott, nearly took Ott out. But we do know that they're in the area, so it makes sense. And they're drawn to the Myrmidon, which is why they're in the area. So we have a mud method. So having one mud method sounds right. Let's go ahead. So they are in Monster Manual. So let's go ahead and pull up the Monster Manual. Come on. There we go. Methods. So we want a mud method. So this guy, this little ugly looking creature right here. So they're, rowing in the boats, and then this thing sort of pops up, and there's going to be quite a few of them probably, because, right, we have a whole bunch of people. And so that's going to sort of like pop up from sort of like the coastal area that we have around, and will So they're probably coming in from probably this marsh area over here, and then maybe one of these other areas, maybe from the southeast, and we'll be attacking the boats. Pretty easy. Now, one thing that I hadn't done yet, but Leah would have done, is that she would have already cast Mage Armor on herself. So I'm going to go ahead and say that she's casted Mage Armor, which takes her from an AC of 11 to 14, because it's just a thing that wizards do every morning if you have that spell. I really wish it was a class feature instead of a spell, because basically if you're a wizard, since they don't give you armor, you basically have to take Mage Armor. Unless you get some of the magical armors that allow you to wear armor that you're not proficient with, because wizards don't have any armor proficiencies. So you either have to spend feats or get a specific magic item, or otherwise you're going to have to spend the first level spell slot every single day you adventure to cast Mage Armor, which isn't a big deal when you have second, third, fourth, fifth level spells. But at first level, when you only have 2 spells a day, If I can find some D4. There we go. Not a bad roll. 2 4s on the dice. And a 2. So that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 points of damage. So she kind of pops this thing, grabs her staff and sort of sticks it in its face and just shoots these into it, which is really good. Right, what we need. So now it's down to 12 hit points. But she did spend her last level 1 spell, unfortunately. So now she's down to cantrips. So at this point, I think I'm going to give let me do the Mud Mythic's turn, then we'll kind of figure out how everybody else is doing in the fight. Mud Mythic will make another fist attack. That's 12 on the die, which I think will hit, but let's double check. That's a total of 15. I think her AC is 14, right? Yeah, okay. So he reaches up and smacks her for a d6 plus 1. Ooh, thank goodness. Minimum damage. Alright, so she goes from 8 to 6. Alright, so let's find out sort of how things are going for the group in general. And I'm just going to roll 2d6, which makes us a nice bell curve. And then hopefully if they're doing really, really well, maybe Leah's going to get some help. If they're doing really poorly, Leah may have to think of some sort of alternatives to get her way out of here. Unfortunately, they're on a lake, so there's not... These things have swim speed, so fleeing from these things is going to be really difficult. Alright, I kind of rolled in the middle, so they're kind of in the middle. So they're holding their own. So it's still very much a one-on-one fight. So Leah will continue to fight. So Leah is going to, I guess, cast another Firebolt. Because that's the thing that does the most amount of damage. And slowing down a creature, which I believe is what Frostbite does, is not going to be particularly helpful because she's already in melee with it. Now, unfortunately, she has disadvantage, though. Does she just smack this thing with her staff instead? Maybe. I think she's just going to smack this thing with her staff. Does she have advantage because she has a bunch of friends near her? I think we were using flanking rules or gang up rules previously with Ott, but here I don't think that makes sense. I don't think that makes sense. Hey, 16 on the die. So she reaches out and just slaps this thing with her staff on the head. Just kind of bonks it. Which does a D8. And Leah's actually got some strength for a wizard. She actually has a +1 in strength, so she'll get a +1 in the roll. Alright, pretty good. 6 + 1, that's 7. Doing her best fighter impression. This thing's down to 5 hit points. Okay, does this thing flee? Let's do a sort of a morale roll for this thing. 7 on 2d6, so it's right in the middle. I don't know how I feel about that. You know what? I think I'm going to do an oracle roll instead. Since it kind of hit us literally right in the middle of our bell curve. So I think I'm just going to ask the oracle instead, because we didn't really get a definitive answer using the 2d6. So for the oracle roll, we roll a d20. If we roll 13 or higher, the answer is yes. If we roll 8 or lower, the answer is no. If it's 9 to 12, it's something that benefits us, but it has some sort of complication to it. Pretty easy. It's one of the core things that we use for like running a solo RPG, to help us answer those sort of like unknowns. So, is this thing going to flee? Is the Mud Mythic going to flee? That's a natural 20. Which means it's yes. Yes and. Now usually I'd roll on this, but I think to find out what the and portion is, but I think the and portion that makes sense is that the whole group does enough to drive these things off. And so combat just ends at that point. I think that's what makes it the most amount of sense, is that, once like the whole group gets together and starts to coordinate and starts to actually repel the borders of their boats, that these things are like, nope, I'm out. And so I think that's what happens. All right. So yeah, that was our first combat. Leah looks okay. She's out of spells though. Man, level 1 wizards. Am I right? Now that's it. I rolled a. I can't remember what I rolled for the other stuff. No, I rolled a. Okay, so there was no POI, but I can't remember what I rolled for the level of endurance or exhaustion that kind of comes up here. Constitution. Okay, 5. All right, so that puts us at 16. So I think they're gonna push into the next square to get us out of here, which I think will put us on not water. Now I think we're going to the point where the oasis turns, the outflow of the oasis, which is actually a river. So I think that's where we're going to move down to the southeast. And so the first thing we need to determine is, what is this? So we use that. So for that we have a little 2d6 biome diversity that we use right here. And that's based off of, so we know that it's light, sort of a light forest is the general vibe. So let's roll our 2d6 and figure out what this hex is. Rolled a 9, which I think makes it drier. Right? Yeah, one more arid. So this is right here. This is going to be a little grassland. Boop. Done. All right. So I also want to know. So I know. Let's go move this over to the left. So we know. So basically, we're moving into this hex, which is a higher level. The levels of the hex is kind of stacked. They're like nesting dolls. So we know that this river is gonna go to the northeast, and then around down here. So let's find out the course that the river takes. Now, I will tell you that I really enjoy HexTML. This is a web app that you can use to do hex mapping. It's really great. Really enjoy it. It allows you to save and load files into it again later, which I really appreciate. It's also a web app, so I don't have to pay for anything on my computer. It's totally free. You can back it on Patreon. Definitely do that if you have the means. Really great product. What I will say about it is that the rivers and roads that they've introduced, the tools don't quite work perfectly, and you'll probably see that as I go on. There's a lot of kind of going back and fixing you end up having to do. But the rest of it works really great, and I really enjoy it. So let's find out kind of the direction the river goes. 9, which I believe is straight. So let me do that. So it's going to continue going sort of southeast. There we go. So as you can see, it kind of already screwed that up. That's fine. So we move into the square. Let's roll our d12 and everything. Alright, well I rolled a 12 on the d12, which I believe means there is some dressing of some sort. But so I rolled a 4, so let's go ahead and build that up. Alright, so it's going to be a con save of 20, so there's almost zero likelihood that she's going to be able to make this save as she goes in. And a 13, so there's no point of interest here. I believe that's correct. Let's go up here to the top. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Yeah, so we have some wilderness dressing, which is the d20. 7. Now again, I've got that in here, so let's look those up real quick. Let's find out what sort of and dressings are not quite the same as encounters. They are other things that happen that aren't necessarily usually combat encounters or creature encounters of that type. And I'll show you what I mean. So I rolled a 7. Oh, okay. So as it turns out, we get into here, and I guess that storm, because we had a storm, past couple of days been kind of stormy. So we move into the square, into this hex, and there's a wildfire that's going on. So let's just roll. I think they've got boats. I don't think there's any reason they would get off the river at this point. So let's just see. I'm going to roll another oracle roll to see if that fire is going to affect them, since they're basically on water. Alright, I rolled a 10, which is... we're going to interpret it as no, because we don't really want the fire to affect us, but it does mean that there's some sort of bit that kind of comes off of that. river bend is they sort of pull out the boats and they decide to camp there for the night. Let me make my, I'd say make my save, but we don't need to make my save because there's no way Leah can pass that save. Well, I don't know. I'll give it to her. Like if she rolled a natural 20, that she could pass it, but so she's got a 5% chance of passing it, but she doesn't. All right, so she takes a level 2 exhaustion, which is bad. Does that make her slowed? I think that's what second level exhaustion does. Yeah, her speed is half, so she's slowed. So yeah, she's like dog tired at this point, as they sort of pull the boats up onto shore, onto the riverbank, and start to make camp. Yeah, that's what I think of doing. I guess the question is like, other people might not be as tired as Leah is. Is anybody else going to sort of explore this hex while she and maybe some of the other people set up camp? So let's roll an oracle roll. No. I rolled no. It was a low number. Alright, so she will do her rest. So she's going to take her level 1 exhaustion. This constitution is going to reset to 0. Unfortunately, she still has... So level 1 exhaustion means that she has disadvantage on ability checks. Not attacks, not saves, just specifically like skill checks. And so what we need to find out is that we'll roll our d12 to see if anything happens sort of during the night, if there's any sort of encounters or anything like that overnight. No. Alright, perfect. I do need to roll a d6 for her rations. Alright, rolled a 6. So in the solo playthrough, I'm using the resource die mechanic. And let me pull up Leah so you guys can see that. So you'll see it down there on the left. We have 1d6 rations. So basically, at the end of any day, and actually, let me go over to Ott, because Ott's got more stuff. So you'll see that she has arrows, rations, torches. So basically, anytime that you go through a specific thing where one of those resources might be rolled up, might be used up, you roll the die. If you roll a 1, it goes from a d6 to a d4. If you roll a 1 on a d4, it goes to a 1, which means you only have 1 of that resource left. And then, of course, it goes from 1 to 0. So a d6 on arrows means that, like, every time that Ott is in a combat and she uses 2 or more arrows, we consider that she's not trying to conserve arrows. She's not trying to conserve ammunition, and so she'll need to roll the d6 after that encounter. This is a way to... It's sort of a middle ground between not tracking resources at all, and if you don't do that, especially in the game like 5e, it makes ranged attacks very, very powerful, because there's no resource sort of fatigue on them, compared to like spells. Of course, the sort of fatigue for being a melee combatant is that the characters are going to hit you because you're in melee with them. Right, the monsters are going to attack you. But if you're ranged, the monsters probably aren't going to attack you. At least most monsters will. Most monsters are melee based. So it's really important to have sort of use that ammunition as a dwindling resource, just like we do with spells. And then for rations, we roll at the end of the day. And torches, we do basically after every, what we might consider a scene that we're using torches. So if we were like dungeon crawling, we're not dungeon crawling right now, but every time we move sort of like from one area to another area, or we spent time exploring an area, we'd roll that. But we don't have to really worry about that right now. But we rolled well on our rations, so we don't have to worry about that with Leah. So she has plenty of rations still. And it's supposed to, in addition to just being rations that you consume, it also is supposed to sort of abstract things like food going bad, or like wildlife getting a hold of it, or something like that. Like if you open up your bag and like a bunch of your like hardtack has been infested with weevils and worms and stuff, and you're like, I'm not going to eat that, then yeah, that's sort of natural loss of those resources. other than you just physically eating them. Alright, so it's the morning. She's still tired, right? She still has that first level of exhaustion. But she and the group are getting together and they are going to move on. Now, at this point, I think they're going to look at Leah for some information as to where she thinks the Myrmidon may have gone. So we kind of have this idea that maybe there's a hazard to the, what is southwest of us right now. So they're going to ask her to sort of make a check, and I think, well, I guess it's not really check worthy because we can't really tell if that's going to be a success or not. I guess the big question is does Leah think that we should investigate? Does she think should they investigate this mountainous area they're in for the Myrmidon? I'm gonna guess that that's probably no. But let me give her. I'm gonna give her just like a basic straight sort of. I'm gonna say that that's an Arcana check. Now remember, she has disadvantage on all these checks because she's still exhausted. Well, that's a natural one. She's like, I don't have any clue. I don't know anything about this area. I barely know anything about this Myrmidon. It's been corrupted, right? It's not acting in the way it's supposed. That most of my research has said that it's going to act. So she's like, I don't think that it would be naturally. Like, I think it's natural to assume that they normally wouldn't be in the mountainous area. They'd really stick to the sort of lowlands where a bunch of water gathers. But because this one's all screwed up because it's corrupted, maybe it's here. So maybe it's worth exploring because we really have no bearing, and it's not like the thing leaves footprints for them to track, right? I think it's highly likely that probably if it was a normal operating water elemental Myrmidon, it would probably be following the river. But in this case, they don't know that, so I think she's like, we should probably at least spend time investigating here. So I'm going to let them search for a POI in this area, which does count as... So if we're not moving, things work exactly the same. There might be a random encounter. The only thing that changes is that instead of rolling a d20 for the POI, we're going to roll a d6, so there's a much higher likelihood that we're going to find a point of interest. I rolled a 2, which I believe we have to roll a 1 because we're in the wilds. Yeah. So we didn't do that. Is there a random encounter that happens? No. And let's find out, how... Okay, awesome. So she only rolled a 1. We only rolled a 1 on the d6, so she feels pretty confident. So I also want to make a note here, so we'll put this in secret notes. This is specifically, because we spent the time to search for a point of interest, we know specifically that there is not a point of interest in here. So if we're passing through a hex and we don't stop to actually explore it to look for a point of interest, there may still be a point of interest, we just didn't run across it. But we know specifically there's not a point of interest in this sort of mountainous area. Alright. So the question is do we follow the river? Or do we go to what we think is sort of the hazardous area? I think I'm just going to give a d20 roll for Gimble, since Gimble's sort of the person who's in charge. If we roll high, we're going to follow the river. If we roll low, we're going to abandon our boats and see if we can make it over to where the hazard is. Alright, that's high. We're following the river. So everybody hops back into the longboats and starts following the river. So we're going to head up into here. Well, I rolled low again on the con, so that's nice. So we're only up to 3. So as you can tell, like, the idea with the sort of Constitution thing is that you're never really certain how much progress you're going to make in a day before you start getting tired. And that's just sort of to abstract the abstract the idea of like difficult terrain and how much longer, because rather than the way that I set it up is, since each hex is, I consider, an hour of travel, rather than augmenting how long it takes to get through a hex, I augment how much strain it is on the people getting through the hex. So it's slightly different. I think it's easier to map that way. I don't know, to each their own. What did I roll? So we definitely didn't have any sort of thing that hops up on us. We don't have a point of interest. So let's find out what biome this is. 9, which I believe is more arid again. So this could be another grassland. And let's find our river course. Rolled a 6 on the river course, which I believe is just straight. So it's going to pass into this area. Alright, so it's going to take us probably out of this hex. As far as we know, all the rumors we've gathered at this point says that it's in, the Myrmidon is specifically in this hex. We think. So I think we have to explore these hexes. That's not what I meant to do. Now remember, we didn't actually explore this hex over here with the wildfire. But I think we are going to explore this hex. Alright, so we don't run across anything like that. What about the POI? No POI, but we did, that did take quite a bit out of us as we got out of there. So it goes up to, our con goes up to 8 out of 12, but we don't specifically, that's confirmed empty. And just for you guys knowing, so we are in a, there are 3 types of hexes when it comes to points of interest. There are, no, actually I screwed that up, didn't I? I did in fact screw that up. That's okay. I rolled a 3 though. Was 3 do it? Okay, yeah. Sorry, this is actually, this area down here is actually a March's hex instead of a Wild's hex. Got that screwed up. So we did actually roll. There is actually a POI here. So let me fix that real quick. 9. Alright, so there's some sort of signage here. Alright, so there's some sort of directional sign. And it's going to point to some sort of POI. I think we're just going to do 1d6 in a circle, and we'll just figure out what that is. 2. So to the east is, and let's just roll another POI, and that'll tell us. A 16. Treasure rumor. Oh, do I want to re-roll that? That's kind of a weird thing to have on a side. To be like, hey, there's treasure somewhere. That's a weird thing to put on a sign. That seems quite sus. So I'm going to actually re-roll that. Because that doesn't really make sense for a sign. A 2. Okay, that's much better. 2's a holding. So we know there's a holding to the east. Okay. So we know, like, in the general easterly direction, the next POI we're going to run into is going to be a holding. I think is what we're gonna do, since we don't know anything else. So obviously this continues out of the way. Um, do they abandon the boats and go east? I think so. I think they're gonna portage the boats. Are they gonna portage them? Or are they gonna leave them? All right, they're gonna figure out something with the boats, and then I think they're gonna go east. I think they're gonna try to visit this holding where the directional signage is. It's pointing them towards to see if they have any better sort of rumors or understanding about where this Myrmidon is that they're looking for, which I think makes sense. All right. So yeah. Are they gonna portage the boats? They're probably not gonna portage the boats. They're probably gonna hide the boats with some ground cover and just leave them there so they can come back for them later. And then they're gonna head off east, I think, to see if they can find that holding. So next time we roll up that there is a POI, which may be this hex, and if that's the case, then there will be a holding in this hex. And holding just means that there's some sort of like manor house, an estate, a keep, something like that. Some sort of minor noble lord is there. Let's roll this up. All right, we didn't come across any sort of encounter. We rolled a 5, which I believe is. Oh, sorry, we rolled a 16, so we did not immediately come across the holding. We did roll a 5 here, though, which takes us to 13. So we passed our con level. So Leah's obviously going to want to stop. Because remember, she's still exhausted from the previous day. And now they're traveling over land. Huh. Do they rest? I'm going to give her, I think, a charisma check to see if she can sort of convince them. And she's got okay charisma. She's not trained in persuasion, but I'm going to give her a persuasion check to see if she can convince Gimble and them to stop for the day because she's tired. Before they get too far along. It's only an 8, so probably not. But I've got a 3d6 way to make DCs just randomly, so we'll see if that counts. No. That was DC 15. So no, they push on. But she does have her spells back, and she does have her hit points back. So she's back to 8 hit points. She has rested since then. Alright. Here we go. So they're going to search the area for the keep. So they're going to do that. No, and solo exploration marches. No. So they confirm that the keep is, or the holding is definitely not here. So we confirm that being empty. That adds another 3, so she needs to make a DC 16 Constitution saving throw. Alright, here we go. Big money, no whammies. Nope, that's a whammy. That's a 5 on the die. Leah's really struggling. So yeah, they've had a few hours out, they tried to find things in the mountains and down following the river and trying to find out things there, and then now trying to find this keep. Oh, we didn't determine what the actual biome is. Let's do that. 6, which I believe is exactly what it's supposed to be. I think that just follows that. Pretty sure. Yeah, same as Origin. Alright, cool. So here we have this guy, and then we need to change the color of him to there we go. It's yellow. Done. Alright, so we go there to this forested area. They don't find what they're looking for in here. She's dead tired. Are they going to... Is Gimble going to stop? Or is she holding... I guess that's an oracle question. Is Leah holding the group back? Like, is everybody okay and Leah's coming back? I don't think that's the case because she has a +2 to con, which is certainly better than commoners. So I don't think that's the case. So I'm gonna do a oracle roll, but I'm gonna give her, man, with the +2, but she's not trained in Constitution. Is she trained in? I don't think she's trained in athletics or anything. No. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say it's unlikely instead of very unlikely. So it's I'm gonna roll the d20 with a -3 to see if she's holding the group back. No, I rolled a 9 on the die. -3 is 6. So she's not holding the group back. So everybody feels about how she does. Like they're all really tired, just sort of trudging over land and cutting their way through this forest and trying to find this holding. So that is not the case. So they will rest, which will take her back down to level 1 exhaustion. 0 there. She didn't cast any spell. Well, I gave her both these spells slots back, but really she'll basically always just have 1 gone because she's always going to cast Mage Armor when she gets up. Because it would be silly not to. Okay. Alright, so they're still on the search for this Myrmidon. They are not having a lot of luck. I think at this point they know that they're reaching sort of the boundary of the box, so I think they're going to turn around and they're probably going to head southwest, maybe? Like into this hex, I think. So they wake up in the morning. Oh, let me do my rations check. Okay, we're going on rations. So they wake up in the morning and they're like, all right, we're going to head southwest. We're going to double back. Thinking that they've reached the end. They're like, we spent like 2 hours trying to find this holding to the east where the sign said. It didn't say anything. We didn't come across anything, so we're gonna stay abandoned with the boats right now because we see that the river is bending and going to the northeast, which we don't think is where the Myrmidon is. So we're gonna head down. Oh, I should say we're on day 3 now. So we are. Let's do this. I do have the weather here. The weather isn't too impacting though, because it's still cool and calm and cloudy and foggy. So it's not great as far as finding anything, but it's relatively comfortable weather for like trekking. So that's nice. I mean, it could be a lot worse. So they're gonna go ahead and yeah, we're gonna go ahead and head to the southwest. So let's make those checks. All right. Fortunately, I rolled a 6 on the con, so that's great. And now that I'm using it in person, I may dump this. So I was usually using the con as a D6. I may push it down to a D4, just because it seems often that we only get about 3 to 4 hours of work into a day, which is kind of light. So I may push it down a little bit. That should give us one or two extras. I'll think about that for next time. I may change that for next time. Just because it makes, if you have a low con character, and Leah's not even a low con character, it makes it kind of difficult to get a lot done in a day. But we're going to keep moving. So we did that. There was no encounter or dressing. But we did roll a 2 on the d20, so I think we are going to find that POI. Which is a holding, right? That's what we came across. Yeah. So the holding's actually here. So the signage is not great at the river. So let's make a note here. It's like actually to the southeast. Alright, so we do have a holding here. So we found the holding, honestly, by accident. We just kind of walked into it. Which is a great thing. That's one of the things that I like to do, is sort of like this generative hex crawling thing, is that sometimes the signs are just not perfect. Kind of like signs in the real world, where the signage there was like, oh yeah, you should head east and you'll hit this keep or holding or whatever it is, and it's like, no, actually it's to the southeast. And you're totally gonna miss it if you head east. Alright, I rolled an 11, which means that this is hills. That's what this is. And we have these guys, so it's gonna be a forested hills. And then we're gonna go ahead and drop this down here. Pop up. So yeah, they actually end up climbing up into the hills, and once they get there, then they're gonna actually find the holding. And let's roll a d6 for the holding. A 3, okay. And before I get too far along, let me put the icon down so that way I know. Boop. So we use these little icons, and this one's a little shield, little like coat of arms, which I used for holding. So we know this is a holding. What was I going to do next? I just forgot what I was going to do. Oh, right, I rolled 3 for the holding. So there's sort of a keep with a palisade. So we say keep, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a stone manor. It could basically be a wooden tower, got a very sort of like Mott and Bailey kind of feel to it. Imagine a Mott and Bailey fortification, but just the Mott, basically, with a palisade around it. All right, should we determine? I guess we should kind of determine. Well, first thing we need to do is to, because every time we come across any sort of holding or thing like that, they've got some sort of other people that live there. So let me roll a d100, because we're on the local level. So outbuildings. So there's basically some sort of huts and around. So there's a population of 25. So there's maybe sort of like 5 or so kind of huts of villagers of commoners that are kind of nestled around this keep, supporting it. So these are sort of your like villagers that do the farming and whatever other things are needed done around sort of the area that this lord sort of rules over. Obviously, this can be a very small time landowner, very small time noble. Now, luckily, we know from last time that Gimble is himself a noble. So he can, if we use sort of the 5e noble background, is that he can sort of invoke the right of hospitality and basically force us. And then if I roll a 6, I'll just re-roll. That's a 3. So to the south. So he gives us a lead that the Myrmidon is to the south. So maybe it's like there. There's a likelihood that it's there. It could be in this square. Could be there. 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 So we've got. That kind of brings us down to basically 5. So I think once we 5 potential squares or hexes. So I think the next time that we hit a POI in one of these hexes, it's gonna be the Myrmidon. So basically, that rules out that the Myrmidon is not the hazard. The hazard is something else. So we can go ahead and change that here. So we know that that's just a hazard. It's not the Myrmidon. And actually, I'm going to this. So this is just put that a little title there. So that's Dren's Keep, and that's where we are right now. So we're gonna rest, which is gonna take our Leah's help totally on board. That I would love to get rid of this first level exhaustion. Thank you. May I have another? And I'm not going to roll rations for them because Dren's going to be forced to provide them sort of sustenance for the day. So let me take. I'm going to take just a quick break. You know, use the bathroom, check on my dog, all that good stuff, and I will be back in just a few minutes. All right. Thanks, guys. Stick around. Like I said, be back just a second. All right, and back. Thanks for hanging on, guys. That's actually one of the things I want to switch over real quick. That was really dumb of me. I was going to use different music while we were out about traveling. Forgot to do it. But to actually switch over, so let me do that real quick. Alright. There we go. It sounds a little bit loud to me. I'm going to turn that down just a little bit. Just a little bit. Maybe, actually, that may be easier to do in here. All right, there we go. All right, so yeah, thanks for hanging on. Hopefully things are going all right with you. If you guys have any questions about like this whole system or any of the things that we've been using, you feel free to drop those in the chat. Or if you want to get some of that information for yourself and like how to do it for yourself, most of that information is the easiest way to get that out to you is through the website reddragonfiend.com. Like I said, been doing that for over a decade, just working on D&D and other TTRPG content. So yeah, I mean that's a great place to get anything. Obviously, if you enjoy this and you want to see more of this, you want to make sure that you can catch up with the old episodes over on YouTube. And that's at Red Ragged Fiend the same. You can of course follow me on Twitter, but following me on Twitch specifically is the best way to get notifications. As when I'm going to go streaming. Like I said, I usually do the stream every Sunday, but I also do sort of impromptu streams sometimes through the week. And so following on Twitch is the best way to get sort of the notifications of when I'm going to go live, right? Otherwise, you can follow me on Twitter and talk to me there. I try to do notifications whenever I'm going live on Twitter. Sometimes I forget, but I do my best. So if you really want to get the notifications, get Twitch. Otherwise, if you just want to, talk to me, ask me questions, do that sort of stuff, get my ideas on stuff, Twitter's the best way to do that. If you want to find more stuff beyond what I do for this solo RPG stuff, just D&D stuff in general and other sort of tabletop RPGs and that sort of thing, the blog is the best way to get that information. Hopefully you guys are doing all right. It's been a nice, easy Sunday for me. I really enjoy doing these streams on Sunday. It's a nice sort of try to knock down sort of that fear of Mondays, right? You have something that's nice and easy and fun to look forward to on Sundays to do. And right, one of the reasons I started this sort of channel is because I was kind of doing the solo RPG stuff by myself anyways, just because I learned I found out, or like something clicked in my mind a few years ago. There's like, you know what? I feel like if I had the same feelings about TTRPGs that people like Matt Colville do, which is that the idea, as he says it, is that D&D is the most fun you can have with your brain. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. Like I really enjoy TTRPGs, and it's easily has become sort of my favorite go-to sort of hobby for spending time. Um, that's not to say that I don't do other things. Like I like video games and all sorts of other stuff that I do. I've been playing through right now. I'm As far as video games are concerned, I have a couple that are sort of in the fire right now. I've been working on um, Xenoblade Chronicles, the first one. I'm doing the redo on Switch. I played it before a little bit on what it originally came out on the Wii, I think. So I played that a little bit, and now I'm playing it on Switch because I never got that far into it on the Wii. I got distracted by something. I'm also replaying. Well, I'm playing for the first time the Mass Effect collection on PC, but I've done Mass Effect 1 through 3 and Andromeda, and now I'm sort of like redoing that sort of on the PC at this point, and that's been a lot of fun. I'm also playing what's the other one I've been playing recently? Oh, Vampire Survivors, which has been a lot of fun, right? And as I get older, as much as I love RPGs, especially whether they're Western or JRPGs, it's really hard to sort of make that like 80 plus hour commitment to really like sink your teeth in and make it feel like you get the most out of the game. You get the full experience of the game. As I get older and I have more responsibilities and other things that sort of occupy my free time, that's much more difficult to do. So a game like Vampire Survivors or something like that, something that's got like bite-sized content, but isn't just like a Skinner box treadmill, like a Destiny or something like that. Those are the sort of games that kind of jump out to me. Like I played last year. I played what's the name of that game? Hawaii Shakedown. I'm gonna look it up real quick. Shakedown Hawaii. Got it flipped. Shakedown Hawaii. I played that last year. It was probably one of my favorite games from last year that I played. It's basically an updated sort of clone of Grand Theft Auto 1/2. So it's like a top down run and gun kind of drive cars around the city, and you're doing it in Hawaii, and it's silly and stupid, and I think it only has like somewhere between 5 to 10 hours of content. But it's like those 5 to 10 hours of content were really good content that I really enjoyed. And so yeah, and then I was like, okay, doing that sort of that Retro City Rampage style. And I was like, man, that was really much more fulfilling than some of the like last year. I also played into this year Red Dead Redemption 2, and I was like, I liked the game, but man, I have like 100 plus hours in it, and I'm like, I feel like 50 of those hours were just like riding my horse to get places. And I'm like, if that's 50% of your game, man, like I got, like I'm an adult. I got other things I got to do. Like if you're not gonna have a fast travel system that allows me to like get to the good content quickly, and you have mostly this sort of filler content, I don't know, it kind of put me off of it. I was about 50 hours, and I really kind of struggled for the next 20 to 30 hours through it. And then until I got to a point where I just basically focused on the story missions, and that I was basically tired of the game at that point. I was just like, I have to finish this game. Um, just to say I finished it, which is weird because I really, really enjoyed, of course, the first Red Dead Redemption, which is a great game. But there's a lot of things about Red Dead Redemption 2 that I wish I liked more. This thing is, I wish I had the time to invest in it, but I didn't really have the time to invest in it. So it's the thing that's kind of kept me away from. I say it kept me away from RPGs, but I'm definitely playing like two large RPGs at this point. But obviously, one of them I've played before. Actually, both of them I've played before. One to completion, one to not. And I felt the same thing. I had that same fatigue with Xenoblade Chronicles. I had that. I was like, man, I feel like I spend most of my time running around the stages rather than doing the actual, crunchy content, the meaty content of the game. That's really difficult. Um, I'm sorry, I'm getting kind of off track. Let's jump back in. We should jump back in and do the thing we're actually here for. Let's do that. Let's jump back over. Jump back over to full screen so you guys can see. Yep. All right. There's Hawaii. Shakedown Hawaii. All right. So we finished. So we finished with Dren's Keep. We got our nice sleep. We got our exhaustion done. We have good intel, supposedly good intel from Dren. I guess that's true. Um, hmm. Well, the truth is that we wouldn't know whether Dren's intel is good or not until we explored it. So I'm not going to make any sort of roll to figure out if Dren's lying or not, or not necessarily lying, but didn't have good intel. So we're just going to use his intel and assume that it is truthful at this point. And we'll find out through sort of the rolls we do as we go through and generate sort of the stuff that this is whether or not he was very helpful for us. All right. So the question is do we go to this square or this square? Hex. I'm going to say squares a lot, obviously, instead of hexes, but same thing. This sort of this specific geographic position. Hex instead of square. And if I roll low, we're going to go left. If I roll high, we're going to go right. Because we really don't know. Okay, we're going to go right. So we're going to go into this hex. All right, so let's make our rolls. Ew. All right. Sorry, that actually... So I did a bunch of these weather rolls beforehand, thinking that, no, there's no way, like 5 will be enough. We definitely won't go through 5. And then I'm like, nah, we're definitely probably going to go through 5, if not more. So note to myself in the future, I need to do more weather generation than I think if we're going to do hexploration. And like I said, I'm probably going to drop down that 1d6 roll to a 1d4, which we'll see here, because I'm going to... because unfortunately, I rolled a 6, so we're already like 50% of the way through that. It really kind of sucks to be like, you only get like 2 hours of movement through hexes. Like 2 hexes you can move through in the day. And that's tough. Doing nothing but moving, which I don't feel like. So I want it to be more than D&D 5e's baseline, where they're like, you can move 24 hours in a day. As somebody that has sort of a background in doing specifically like backpacking and canoeing and things like that for weeks at a time, I can tell you that you're probably not going to be going 24 hours a day. You're going to be lucky on most days if you're going to go half that. So 12 hours is a lot closer to where I'm going to do that. But only being able to cover 2 squares is much different. That's only like 5 to 6 miles. So we're a little bit low on that. So I think I'm going to, like I said, I think I'm going to drop that down from a D6 to a D4. Which I think will balance a little bit better. All right, but that's where we're going. We do not have any sort of random encounter. We do not come across any sort of POI naturally. Let's find out what's going on in here. Oh, all right, a 2. So when we roll a 2 for a biome, 2 for a biome is always water, unless it's a water hex, and then it's something else. But it is water. Okay, so this hex is water. So that, in my mind, means that there's a high likelihood that the Myrmidon's here. Because we know that a water elemental is going to be drawn to water, or at least would normally. And I think that Leah's going to push for them to investigate this area more. Now, the problem is that their boats are about 2 hours that way. So they're going to have to do as well as they can. Now, we know previously the Myrmidon was making a bunch of storm stuff appear. So we'll have to see if that's the case. And that's going to be one of the things to see, because if there's a POI, it's definitely going to be the Myrmidon. So we're going to spend the extra time to investigate this area. I think Leo would convince them to do that. I'm not going to make a roll for that, because I don't think there's any reason that if Leah pipes up about that they would be like, I'm not going to listen to you. That's why we brought you along. That's why they brought Leah along, right? Specifically because she knows about elementals. Alright, so we go up to 10 here. We did not roll a random encounter. Let's roll a... So usually we roll a d6 for the POIs, but anytime that there's a water hex, we roll a d10. Just because that helps from making like weird things where there's a bunch of things like there's a village in the middle of a lake. Well, that doesn't make any sense. You're right, it doesn't. That's why we don't want it to happen very often. No. Alright, so there was no PI. So this is confirmed empty. So we have that. So that's confirmed empty. Alright, well, unfortunately that means that we've spent most of Leah's use for the day. Do we go east? Or east. Do we go west or southwest? If I roll high, we're going to go southwest. Well, that's a 6. That's as high as you can get on 6-sided, so we're going to go southwest. So we're going to go into this square. Alright, so let's get our rolls. So we try to find this thing. Luckily, we only rolled a 1 on our con, so it only goes up to 11. So we're going to get through that. There's no encounter or dressing, which is always good. And we definitely didn't come across the POI. I think since we're in the box, we're in this area, we're going to search every spot that we come across at this point. Because it's the best intel that we have that something is in this area. But we also need to know first what kind of biome it is. 6. Alright, so that means it's the same as the origin point, which means that it is lightly forested. Now you'll notice that I'm using the these very palm-looking things, and that's because we are in a tropical area, if you hadn't got on already. So if you look up here, we are very situated in the 7 to 12 degrees north of the equator, so we're in a very hot, very tropical sort of area, which, you know, you could be forgiven for not recognizing that, because a lot of the area that we're coming across has been relatively dry. But the idea is that we are still in a very tropical climate. It's just, it's hot, but it's also tends to be kind of dry, because that's just the area we're in. So you can imagine those these sort of plain hexes are more like, not necessarily like Great Plains of America or steppes of Eurasia. They're more like Serengeti, like tropical, or like the pampas of like South America. And so we're going to move down into here. We're going to spend the time to search this area. Alright, so we got a +2. So we've gone over our con. So we're going to start getting exhaustion. I don't know why I rolled the 20. I didn't need that. We did, however, roll a 12, which means we're going to, I believe 12 is dressing, right? Yeah, dressing. So there's going to be a dressing encounter, but let's first see if there's a POI as well. 3. Does 3 do a POI? I can't remember. Yes. Alright. So there is a POI that we're going to come across. 1. Alright, so that means a 1 on the POI means there's a village here. You know, technically it's going to be a hamlet. this up. So hamlets have between 50 to 400 people in it. So let's just do the hamlet real fast, and then we'll figure out the dressing stuff. So the hamlet's got a population of about 200 in it. So it is likely, obviously we haven't explored the entirety of all the hexes around here, but it's likely that Dren is also the overseer of this village, or this hamlet, as well. Which is, about 2 hours away from him, which makes sense. That's a pretty easy, day trip for him, for this area. Alright, well, let's figure out our dressing real quick. Three. Dungeons, wilderness dressing. Technically we are in forest. Though I guess I'd probably consider this jungle, because we're in the tropical area. Whatever. A 3. Alright, so we come across a large burrow beneath tree roots. Oh, do we want to investigate that? Alright, we're gonna do a few steps here. First, does Leah think that a burrow is something that the Myrmidon would do? I think that's pretty unlikely. But I'm going to give her advantage on basically this intelligence check. Well, she only rolled an 8 on the die, so she's like, it could be. So does she convince them to investigate it? Man, I think that's unlikely. She's like, it could, because I think Leah's very much in this situation in which she expects everything in her research, in her knowledge, tells her that this water elemental is going to do this one thing. And what we learn is that the corrupted Myrmidon doesn't do the things it should do. So she's kind of at a loss. She's like, okay, I don't think that a water elemental would normally burrow under these trees. But the one that's all screwed up, and we know we're next to a lake, basically. Maybe there's some sort of underground water source that it's looking for. So she's going to try to convince them, but it's just going to be like a flat D20. Like, will she convince Gimble and his crew to investigate the burrow under these trees? My guys, that's a 19 on the die. That's unfortunately, I believe that is a yes and. Let me double check, but I'm pretty sure that's a yes and. Let me double check real quick. Yeah. Yes and. Alright. So I think, right, I think they're all, Gimble and his crew are all jazzed up based off of Dren's information. They're like, we absolutely need to go down there and do that. Oh, you know what? I have not been keeping up with the days. I was just thinking about that, looking at the village. That's okay. But they're like, absolutely, any opportunity they're going to jump on. So let's find out sort of the extra thing that comes with the and portion. So that's going to be something positive for us. Something positive dealing with our PC. Well, that's Leah. We only have one PC. That's Leah. All right, so a couple of D100 checks. 76, mistrust. Interesting. Mistrust fame. What would that mean? As something positive, so she mistrusts fame, but it's in her. Man, I have no idea what that would mean off the top of my head. How mistrust fame would be something in a good light horror. Okay, all right. So I think this isn't really super PC related, but I think Leah, and specifically in this interaction with Gimble and the way that she's seen him sort of treat the people that he works with, even though he is technically a slaver, she's like, in all the infamy that comes with being somebody who like enslaves people and monsters for a living. I think she sees that Gimble is kind of an okay person who's just in a real kind of dicey industry. And I think we determined previously that Leah's kind of ambivalent towards slavery. Slavery in D&D is always weird because like a majority of the sort of sentient monsters are slavers, which is a weird cultural thing to, or societal thing to kind of put into your game. Um, I guess because that's easy to code them as bad or evil. But the idea is that this is probably not like chattel slavery, right? Like the American South. This is maybe something that's more akin to like Greek or Roman slavery, where, or even sort of like Nordic slavery, where people are slaves, but you don't necessarily treat them as like livestock. They're sort of like, they're kind of like employees, sort of, um, but they're bonded to you. The idea is that Leah does not, by its nature, think that slavery is super bad, and that's a product of coming up in the culture of where she comes up and all the things that are coming into there. And we just kind of rolled for that randomly. That this is kind of a not. It's not super commonplace, but it's commonplace enough that people don't really think about it that much. So I think we think that probably in the larger cities, like like Riverside, like the city that we know, because we don't know the city name yet. Wherever her, let me pull up. So Riverside Conservatory is where she did her sort of academic work. And I think that that came. We definitely know that Riverside Conservatory was in a larger city, and so that means that there were probably people who had slaves, and she's familiar with that and doesn't see it as the institution itself is necessarily evil. Really, that's dependent upon like the individual owner and how they treat their slaves and the legal regulations around that. So I think she sees that. She sees that Gimble's, it seems like an actually okay guy, and he's listening to her and he's helping his followers and all that. So I think that's the positive. Is that I think that positive is that I think she and Gimble are a little bit closer because of this experience. They kind of started as not really knowing each other, and he had kind of hired her, and is very much a very sort of professional, like employer employee sort of relation. But I think they're a little bit closer here. Not necessarily like, certainly not. I don't think, because we haven't talked about that at all romantically in any sort of way. But certainly that she understands him as more. They're moving sort of beyond acquaintance, like beyond employer employee, through sort of acquaintance to almost being kind of friendly with each other. And I think that's how I want that to be. And so when she comes to him and it's like, I think we should investigate this burrow, and he's like, yeah, okay. Now I have this burrow, and the burrow's separate from the POI, so we're going to investigate, I guess, the burrow. So I wasn't planning to do sort of a dungeon thing here, but we can do a dungeon thing here, I guess. So I guess we'll do that. We'll investigate this burrow, which may or may not. I think we'll learn really quickly that whether this does or does not have anything to do with that. So I'm just going to change our scene real quick, and I'm going to look for what I think is kind of an appropriate map real quick for us to use for that, rather than sort of build a map by myself. So let me swap that scene real quick. There we go. Do that so you guys don't have to watch me sort of struggle going through typing. Okay. Let's do that. So I'm going to look for that. So, yeah, how are you guys doing? You guys still doing all right? Enjoying your Sunday? I hope you are. I'm enjoying mine. So I'm looking for a... Yeah, I got a few good options here. Have you guys seen the D&D movie yet? I think I talked about this in my last, maybe 2 streams ago, that I went and saw it, and I thought, yeah, it was all right. It's all right. I thought it was an okay movie in general. Like, viewing it simply on the merits of being a movie, I thought it was an okay movie. I don't think it was super great by any means. I described it to one of my friends as like Guardians of the Galaxy Light. But I said that I think as a movie it's Guardians of the Galaxy Light. As a D&D movie, I thought it was a great D&D movie. I think that it has the Easter eggs. It has the sort of stuff that people are looking for a D&D movie. Without alienating people that don't know anything about Forgotten Realms. And even I only know a little bit about Forgotten Realms. Like, I understand who the Red Wizards that they are and all that. But I'm certainly not, like, deep in the lore by any stretch of the imagination. I kind of like this one. Maybe I'll use this one. Of course, it's from Dyson Logos. All right. Well, you're just going to show me a bunch of maps. I don't know which one was the one I was looking at. Okay. That's alright, I can pick one of the ones out of here. Let's do this one, I guess. Alright. Let me throw this back over. So yeah, this map is from Dyson Logos. If you haven't checked him out, if you do any sort of like D&D, I'm sure you've probably, especially if you're a dungeon master or a game master for any sort of fantasy tabletop RPG, you've probably heard of Dyson Logos. If you hadn't, website's there on the left. He's a quite prolific map maker and makes very high quality maps with very specific style that's very sort of easy to parse while giving you plenty of detail about the maps. You know, if you wanted to look at mapping goats, he'd be among them. So I'm going to kind of avoid this top portion here, this portion, this weird mouth with the staircase down, because we know that it's a burrow. So we're just going to use this bottom part right here. Oh, that's too big. Can I? No. Okay. So we're going to use this sort of burrow, and then this sort of bottom portion here. And what we're going to do is we are going to basically treat... I think this is going to be well, I shouldn't say I wouldn't. Maybe I'll just figure that out. So anyways, they find this sort of like large opening below, sort of like a large tree that's sort of built up. It's got sort of like a like some of the Southeast Asian ruins in like Cambodia and Laos sort of have that sort of feel. It's got that very sort of beginning of Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Crusade. where they have right. Is it Raiders of the Lost Crusade? Last Crusade? I think so. Where they start off with them in sort of like the tropical jungle area, and there's sort of like an opening, sort of like what was here once was sort of been swallowed up by the forest itself, by the jungle, and so there's a ramp that sort of like leads down into this burrow. So I think we're gonna go explore that. All right. So I guess Leah. All right, they're probably gonna use. Does Leah have any way to make light? That's a good question because I don't think I often don't take the light cantrip, and I'm sure people watching are gonna be like, "Why don't you take the light cantrip?" I like magic that doesn't reproduce something that you can easily do with the mundane means, like lanterns and oil are not very expensive. Torches are not very expensive. Um, all right, so I don't have any of that stuff which in her equipment, which makes sense. Well, no, she's got an explorer's pack. So she has torches. Sorry. So she does, in fact, have torches. Not troches. Torches. There we go. So I think they light up torches and they sort of head into this area. They head down what would be this staircase, which kind of puts us that staircase at the top kind of puts us, I think, in this middle staircase on the bottom that kind of comes down into it. So we kind of come into this area, and I've got some dungeon creation rules. I don't know if that's saved in here. Do I have it saved in here? I might have it saved in here. Is that the right one? Yes. Okay. So I do have this. All right. So we don't need to do this. We need to go down to. We don't care about this. We don't care about this. We need to specifically know what's in this chamber. So yeah, I think they head down. He's going to make a just sort of a perception check to try to get the lay of the land here in this first sort of area. Well, there we go. All right, and she has a bonus perception, but she has a negative perception, so she has a +1 to this roll. For a whopping total of 6. I'll roll the DC, but I'm gonna guess it's gonna be above 6. It is. Yeah, no worries. It is. All right, so they kind of wander off down into this primary area, and I'll go ahead and close this tab. So into this middle area on the bottom there. So we're gonna roll into there, and Leah's kind of like holding up a torch, kind of looking around, but that hasn't really seen anything. So now let's figure out whether there was something actually in this room or not. Basically, we need to find out if there's anything that's going to jump out and attack them. 3 and 5, and I believe 5 is a creature. Ooh, there's some sort of hazard obstacle, trigger, trap. I think it's more likely. I think it's almost 100% certain that it's going to be a hazard or an obstacle. I don't think there's going to be a trigger trap down here, but I'll roll for it anyways. Yeah. All right, so there's some sort of hazard or obstacle they're going to run across, and there's also some sort of creature down here. So this is sort of a tropical burrow, so let's figure that out real quick. This is going to be for her level. Actually, it's going to be a lower level. Nice. So it has to be something that's CR 8 or lower, because it can't be CR. Sorry, it has to be 0 or CR 8. And I would say that this would be a cave, would be a good natural environment that we'd use for this. Forest, obviously. Underground. Yeah, I think that's good. So we are. Ooh, that's a good point. We are sort of in the marshes area, so let's give a D6. Oh, humanoid. Interesting. 4. Sorry, I'm just kind of glossing over this real quick. I'll go over this probably in another sort of spot where we have a little bit more time to talk about it. I rolled a 4. So there's some sort of... Alright, we'll delete that. There's going to be some sort of construct down here, though. I like Sacred Statue. I'll do Sacred Statue. Technically rolled a -2. So there is some sort of sacred statue down there that we're going to accidentally trigger, as well as some sort of hazard. We'll roll a d20 for that. And if you're interested in the sort of like, so this is a dungeon creation document that I've been working on. I made it forever ago, but I started revising it last month. And I'm going to put it together and put it up on DriveThruRPG. I'm kind of working on it in the little bits and bobs of time that I have here and there. So I've got it probably 80% complete. But if you're interested in sort of like this document specifically and like how to set up and make a dungeon that makes sense and things like that, if that's the sort of thing you're looking for running a specifically fantasy-based game, then keep an eye out. I'll probably announce it probably on Twitter, so follow over there if you want to get the announcement of when it's going to be available on DriveThruRPG with the link. I rolled 4. Okay, so there is some sort of liquid pool down there. Alright, so we definitely would have seen a pool of water. But is there anything across it? No. Alright, so yeah, we come down here. Maybe it's in the... Let's see. So again, we're sort of like making up as we go. So we come down into this sort of central area down here. But obviously there's this middle section is probably actually full of water instead. And there's probably, I think the sacred statue is probably going to be maybe on the other side from the entrance of it. And as Leah and others go down there, and I'm going to say there's multiple sacred statues that are going to activate, since, again, Leah has like a bunch of people with her. There's like, if like the amount of people that she has with her could not even fit into this chamber. Like, she has a ton of people with her. So to say that there's probably a bigger threat than one statue, that's just the threat that Leah specifically has to deal with in the encounter. Again, kind of abstracting it a little bit. So yeah, I think that they kind of head down in there, and as she maybe takes a step into the edge of the pool, and the water sort of ripple out, that, or maybe she kind of can't see it. Maybe there's a whole bunch of leaves or other detritus that's sort of on top of it, and so she doesn't even know there's water there, and so she kind of like takes a step and kind of falls like into her waist up into this water. And I think that sort of ripple, that disturbance sort of activates the statues to sort of come at them. So let's do a sacred statue, which is Mordenkainen and Summon Foes. Okay. There we go. There we go. Whoop. Huh. Interesting. So I'm looking at the stat block for Sacred Statue, and then I was like, wow, that's kind of a high armor class. Wow, that's a bunch of hit points. That's kind of a lot of damage it does. Why does it have multi-attack? And then I'm like, oh, because the stat block doesn't have the CR on it. They didn't include a CR for Sacred Statue, and that must be why Kobold Club's bringing it up as 0. Um, because, but that's clearly not a 0 CR creature with multi attack and 95 hit points. So we're gonna switch that to Homunculus, I think. Yeah, that needs to be corrected. Okay, there we go. So they're little. I'm gonna guess that they're sort of like uh, folk legend, folk religion, sort of religious stone creatures that kind of come to life. They've got the very sort of tropical jungle, sort of almost like maybe like a totem pole kind of. Like they're kind of gross caricatures of normal animals. And I think that they kind of actually I kind of like the totem pole idea that there's like a bunch of them stacked on top of each other and they all kind of spring to life individually and kind of attack. I like that. So that's what we're gonna go with. There's like these sort of grotesque caricatures of normal animals from the region that have been used as some sort of religious purpose, and then they have come to life now that we have disturbed the waters of this place and come to attack. All right, so this thing has a dex +2, so we're gonna give it. You come in here and be like Homunculus, and so it's gonna go on 12. We just need to find out whether Leah goes before it or not. That's a 9 on the die. I don't think she has a +3 though. No. All right, so the homunculus or homunculi are gonna go first. Again, she's only really kind of dealing with one of them. It's not necessarily like there's only one homunculus in there. I just said we were in a totem pole, so there's a whole bunch of them. There may be multiple sort of like totem, like stacked caricature icons. So obviously they can fly. It's going to fly over and try to bite at Leah. Ooh, 19 on the die is going to hit all day. All right, so she takes 1 piercing damage, and she needs to make the con save. Natural 20 on that con save. Doesn't even matter. Which is good, because it's one of those ones where there's like, oh yeah, saving it is poison. That's not a big deal. Oh, but you failed the save by 5 or more. You're just unconscious. Oh. Good to know that a bad roll is going to do that to you. She takes 1 point of damage from this little thing. And then, all right, it's her turn. She's probably in melee with it. I guess she would probably, since she's in melee with it, she's probably just going to try to whack it with her staff instead. That's pretty good. That's 13 on the die, which I think is its AC. Yeah. So yeah, she hits it for 1d8 + 1. And she rolled a 4 + 1. That's 5. That's all the hit points this thing is. So she kind of stumbles. She's walking in there. She's got her sort of like. Actually, I'm going to say that she probably just hit it with a torch, just for flavor wise. So she's walking with sort of like the torch over her head, sort of like peering into the darkness with her. And she's got pretty good vision because she's got dark vision. So she can see probably the entire chamber with the torch, plus the ways that leads off to the left and right. And she's kind of looking through there, and then she takes a step forward and kind of like drops. She has one of those things, one of those moments where like the stomach turns upside down and she's suddenly falling when she wasn't expecting to, and goes like waist deep in the water. And then these totem fetish stone animals come to life, caricatures on the other side, and sort of fly in their direction and start attacking them. Kind of comes in and slams, and like, right, they technically bites. Leah probably on the arm, and then she just like wails on it with her torch, and that thing goes kerplunk into the water around her. So very short encounter, right? Not much to do there, but that's good. We knew it was going to be an easy encounter. That's what I rolled, an exceptionally easy encounter, um, which is good. So, so that's sort of a conceit as far as design comes for. If you're a game master or dungeon master and you're making your own sort of encounters, is the thing to think about is every time that you um, when you're making adventures and you're trying to think, oh, I want to make encounters that are hard for my players, so they feel like they have to earn the victory, which is fair, right? You should absolutely do that. But also, you look at like guides from like the DMG and stuff like that, where they're like, oh, you should be getting through like 8 encounters in the adventuring day, and you're like, 8 encounters? There's no way they're gonna make it through that. They're gonna make it through like 2, maybe, before they decide to long rest. And part of that is to remember that, right, scenes or encounters in this case include non combat encounters that can be just like looking around at stuff, investigating stuff, having an RP moment, talking about things. But also, like, if you make more, if you can make more easier encounters, that way you can pack more into the day. And that often is a good way to sort of like death by 1,000 cuts player characters. Like if player characters feel really, really overpowered, if you just dog them with little encounters that keeps them from like resting and things like that, that can often be more taxing than having like one big fight where they, people, the all your players will just nova their characters and they'll throw their highest level everything at it and kill it without a problem. So I don't know. That's just design philosophy, I guess, for D&D adventures and other fantasy RPGs. But so that's why I'm not worried about. To sum it up, that's why I'm not worried about like super easy encounters. I'm like it doesn't bother me. At some point, if anything, it's going to lull them into a false sense of security and confidence, and like, oh man, we've wiped out like 5 encounters in this dungeon, and then comes the big hard hitting encounter, and that may or may not be the boss. We talked about that in the dungeon design live stream. If you didn't catch it from earlier this week, or I guess technically last week is the Sunday, back on Thursday, I believe Thursday, yeah, where we talked about having cupcake encounters, which are super easy encounters, like the one we just did, and balancing those against like sledgehammer encounters, which is what I call them, which are probably the hardest encounter, most difficult encounter you'll have in your adventure. And also the idea of maybe it's likely to not be the boss, or at least when I make it, it's likely not the boss. Um, so that way, it sets up a duality where if your players come into a difficult encounter, they're getting their butts kicked, they're either gonna like go Nova and use all their big resources, or they're gonna like try not to use their resources and probably get beat up a whole bunch in it. Well, if neither of those is the boss encounter, that means when they get to the boss encounter, they're either not going to have all their big resources to deal with the boss, or they're going to have all the big resources, but they're not going to have a bunch of healing left because they're going to have used all that because they took a lot more damage than the other encounters. Or if, you do the boss encounter first and then they go Nova on the boss, and then in steps the actual hardest encounter in the adventure after they've just blown all their resources on something else. It's just that's sort of my design philosophy for adventures, is to typically make the boss encounter usually the second hardest encounter of the adventure if you're going strictly by, CR or encounter building structures, is to make it the second hardest of the encounter. So there's always a more difficult encounter floating out there somewhere. But we did our fight. We got down. We got to so we're through the middle area. Leah's got her torch still up. She can see to the right. There's sort of a crude door, sort like a stone door, double door, and then to her left, it seems like it ramps down. And now that I'm looking at this map, I think you guys can see this on the bottom, right? Maybe not quite. I wish it didn't zoom in quite that much. Can I zoom it out? Sort of. Okay. It's going to screw up stuff when I look at other things, but the idea is, right, we came down in this middle area, but one of the things I'm looking at is that, you notice how on the right, in that chamber on the right, we have these look like upper areas or maybe lower areas. They look like upper areas, yeah, because they're casting shadows. So I'm going to just say, I think this entire, because that's the case, I think this, I'm just going to retcon and say this entire section is water, and it's like waist deep water, everything that's not covered by sort of this higher ground area. So I'm just gonna walk it back and make it that. So yeah, they're like basically in hip deep water, which is gonna make combat a little bit more difficult for them. And they see that water goes down, so this left side chamber is almost probably totally submerged, except for the places where it comes up, since they're actually going to go down a ramp into the water, which could make the sight difficult. So which way are they going to go? I guess question is, are the stone doors closed? So I'm just going to roll a flat d20. If I roll high, they're going to be open. I rolled a 16, so they're like ajar, probably, so they're not totally closed. I think, like a lot of people, if you were in, and so I may live with level water. I had it at hip. Maybe I'll break it down to knee. So knee level water, so maybe they can actually not have to swim through those lower chambers. So there's like knee level water, so they make a bunch of sound kind of moving around in here. But they see that it passes through into the chamber on the right. They see that, I think, as most rational people would do, would be like, hey, let's check out the level where we can walk around really easy, and then if we need to, we'll maybe go swimming later. So I think they're gonna check out the area on the right first. Give Leah another perception check. Move over here so we can all see that. Okay. So you can give her a perception check. Not great. It's a 9 on the die, so it's 10. So she definitely doesn't hit the DC. So what I'm looking for with the perception DCs is that I make the roll, then I set the DC, and then either I know, then when I determine what's in the room or not, I already know whether they're going to see it before they get there or not. If they're going to recognize her, if it's going to jump up on them. So now I can roll up. If I roll up that there's a trap in the room, then I know that they're going to activate the trap because I didn't see it. All right, so let's roll 2d6 to figure out what's in the room. Oh, that's double sixes. That's good. Also bad. Okay, so there's only one monster, or one monster type. Rolled a 4, so that's low. So we're gonna look for a 1/8 monster that makes sense for in here. Let's do the same roll I did. So I didn't do this time. Stay with that. Sorry, I'm just doing quick stuff in my head real quick. So we were down to, so that was 4, 8, 12, 13. No, that can't be right. Construct. Okay, it's something humanoid. Sorry, it's not undead, it's humanoid. Something humanoid in here. And it's going to be probably 8th CR. Well, we already know that there's already some sort of religious thing, right? This burrow underneath has been partially worked. That's what they're stepping into. And they got attacked by those creatures, by our homunculi that were basically protecting this burrow, and they've made it through that. So I think there's a humanoid in this room here, and I think that I think I'm going to start off with the cultists. If I have the bandwidth to do more, I'll put tribal warriors in there, but I don't think I will. Yeah. So it's just a cultist that's in there. So there are some people that worship these sort of animalistic fetishes. And the cultist is in the monster manual. Okay. I was probably going to pull up a whole bunch of stuff with cultists. That was dumb. Let's say cult fanatic, but not a cultist. Oh, there it is. Duh. On the left. All right. Yeah. So we've got Dark Devotion against being charmed or frightened. Okay. Otherwise, they're just kind of a person. Now, are we the baddies? Because we just kind of kicked in the door of this potentially sacred place, probably for this village that's also in this square or in this hex. So we may be the baddies in this situation if we just kill them off. All right. I think Leah's smart. Leah's a smart cookie. Intelligence +3, and she's got pretty decent charisma. So I think as they move in and they see that this, because if we look back at the look back here, you see that there's sort of like a raised area on the right that's kind of above everything. So I think this has definitely got sort of like a very like sacred worship place kind of feel to it. That's just for some reason like halfway underwater. I don't know if that's on purpose or not. But so they go in there and I think they see that there's probably a person that's probably up on that dais on the sort of raised area. And I think that Leah's going to try to talk to them and try to get information about the water weird. Now, I think this is going to be a little bit more difficult check because they basically are barging in here heavily armed, like 24 people. And what we know is basically one person's in this room, like, but try to smooth things out. Lee's gonna be like, look, I understand. Sorry, we're on the search for this out of control water elemental. We saw this this watery burrow. We thought it might be down here, and try to talk to this. Try to smooth things over. Be like, we're not here to like kill you as kill all you people as infidels or apostates or anything like that, heretics. We're just trying to find this out of control water elemental, and of course, if you have any information, that would be great. Well, that's a 3 plus a 5, and so that's going to be a big no. That was dumb. I said there's one cultist. There's one cultist per Leah, so there's actually probably half a dozen people in here, maybe up to a dozen, kind of all throughout. So she tries to speak up. It does not go well. Obviously, they raise the alarm for intruders, and we're just going to go into initiative. Now they have a +0, so they've only got a 10. So hopefully Leah can beat that. She does not. All right. Now, lucky thing is that we only need to do like one cultist, so this isn't going to be another sort of very quick combat. We're due to do that by necessity, playing a level 1 character by themselves. It's just we just cannot throw a lot at a character like this and expect them to figure it out. Like Leah does not have any special way to get away from combat if it goes sour. She doesn't have a particularly great spell that will just destroy combat, that will just end the combat. That's sort of like a ripcord that you can pull that will just, an ace card for the combat. especially not at first level. Now, as a wizard goes on, they may get access to that sort of stuff. But for right now, no, she doesn't have any of that. So the cultists will go first. In their dark devotion, they jump off that upper dais and they sort of crash through the water and start to attack. So comes at Leah. Rolls a 4 on the die. That's not going to work. So Leah's going to go. Man, everybody's getting right on top of Leah before she can get like a spell off. We're going to have to figure out some way for her to be able. Well, usually she's not by herself. Usually there's Ott or somebody else who kind of front lines for her. She just doesn't have that right now, based off of poor decisions she made. And I made for her. So she will, I guess, try to hit this guy with her staff. It's worked well so far. I shouldn't knock it like that's a dumb thing. Like she's done really well with the staff so far. But I think she's probably gonna miss there. That's not very high roll. What's their AC? AC. Nope, she actually did hit it. Wow, right on the dot. Okay. Wow. So I rolled an 8 on the die with +1. That's 9. So these very, very sassy cultists, they get Leah walks in here and she tries to explain the situation. She's like, look, I'm sorry, we didn't mean to hurt your weird stone gross caricature body horror things. We're just looking for this water elemental, and they're like, no, sacred space, you've defiled it. And then they all jump off the dais, pulling their scimitars and weapons, and they're ready. They come in for the kill, not really understanding who they're working with. Beyond Leah, these are like professional slavers and mercenaries, and these are basically commoners plus. So I don't know if that's them not being able to see very well in the dark. Maybe they didn't realize how many people were with Leah. Like, right, you look at sort of like the entry room of that room, you can probably see Leah. You can probably see maybe 2 or 3 people behind her. And they're like, oh, even ground, we'll get the jump on them. Not realizing that there's like 20 more people behind those people. Who then flood into the room, and I think they just make a butcher's work of this thing. Like, this guy comes down, takes a swing at Leah. Leah like swings around, comes with a staff, and just like there's just that solid impact of like the gnarled wooden head of her staff with the side of this cultist's head. There's just sort of a sickening crunch, and they just kind of drop like a sack of potatoes. And there's just a flash of violence for maybe 15 seconds, and then like their opponents are all dead and bleeding into the waters there. Well, they didn't get any information. Is there anything to loot out of this room? And by this room, I'm just going to include basically like this entire right area, because I'm going to say that was basically all the bad guys that were in here. So I guess there'll be an investigation check. I'm going to give her advantage because she's got like 24 people with her. And so an investigation check, they're looking for any sort of like, well, we killed these people, like, I guess we should take their, if they had anything valuable, we could take that. I think that's our right as those who were attacked. Again, they're not super great people. Even Leah. I didn't roll very well, though. Let's see if I... Come here. Leah, what is your investigation? Oh, well, you are trained in investigation. Alright, that's a 17. Right? 3 plus 5 plus 12. Yeah, 17. So, I do know that there is a piece of treasure. There is a treasure in this room. I know that because that's what I rolled in the room contents. Now I just have to find out... Ooh, I should have kept the perception DC. I like to do like a 1-room DC for everything. But I don't remember what it is. So I'm going to roll a new DC and see if 17 meets or beats that. That's DC of 11. So yes, they do find the treasure. There's only I have some quick treasure tables. Let me do that real quick. So there's only one PC that's active in here, and they're gonna. This will be like basically loot that they'll split up. Leo will split up with Gimble and his crew. So this will just kind of be her cut of it. So let's see. Boop, 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 boop. Here we go. All right, so she is an adventure tier 1. All right, let's find out the type of treasure she finds. 12. Trade goods. Okay. Trade goods worth 5. Worth 5 platinum. So 50 gold worth of trade goods kind of split up around them. So this is kind of a major cache of something. Gemstones or jewelry. So they now it makes sense why these cultists were so aggressive. I think because they had clearly had a bunch of money in here that they were trying to protect. Because that's 50 times like 25, which is a lot of gold. And we ended up, for our trade goods, ended up rolling gemstones and jewelry. So yeah, I think there's a whole bunch of. So let's put that. We don't need the cultists anymore. I don't think I have one. Right? Okay. All right. So I'm gonna make a little treasure heading here, and I usually do this like if I for treasure that I haven't gotten back to town, treasure that I got that we pick up while on the expedition, and then I will transfer this treasure either over to the character sheet or to hard gold once we get back into town and kind of sell it off. So that way, there's a difference between like the things we're keeping and the things we're potentially selling. So we got 50. So we got a 50 GP gemstone. Let's just say gemstone. Cool. Actually, I'm going to change that just for my own. It's just the way that I like to read it. So, all right. Well, I guess we could always go check. I mean, oh, I guess that's true. I'm gonna give Leah an insight check. So, like we noted that these cultists were really really aggressive. They really kind of jumped out as soon as she kind of started talking. So I think the question is, she's gonna make an insight check on whether she thinks whether them when she mentions the water elemental, is that what drives them to aggression or not, or just it's their presence and the wealth. All right, that's 11. She is not trained in insight, right? So it's a 10. I'll roll the DC for it, but it's probably going to be above a 10. You know, you say one thing, and then you roll a 6 for the DC. So, all right. So the question is, because we made a skill check, I'm going to roll an oracle roll just to see whether that is the case or not. Regardless, there's not going to be any complications for this because we already had a skill check to even get this information. All right, that's 15. So yes, she believes that it was her bringing up the water elemental that drove these cultists into aggression mode, into fight mode. Interesting. Well, obviously they're going to be convinced to be like, all right, well, we need to go check out the other side of this place. So they backtrack. They go down here. So all right, I'm going to do an oracle roll for the water level. basically, I want to know is, are they going to have to swim in this? Basically, is the water level above their head? All right, I rolled a 9, which is right in the middle. So the answer is probably no, but there's some sort of complication that comes along with that, maybe. Which is news for a remote event, which I'm not sure if that's going to pan out. And usually it's so what we do is that if something doesn't jump to mind immediately when we do these event things, we just kind of brush it off and be like, well, I couldn't figure out how to make it work, and I want to keep things going, so nothing happens. Then there's no complication to it. So let's do our D100 rolls. Fight. Fight investment. So I rolled a 9, which means that the water would not be above their head because that would make it things too difficult. But it's something that causes fight and investment, but it's a remote event. Okay, I got it. I think I got it. I think. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I think as they're doing this, and they are right, we've divvied up a bunch of gems of jewelry, and I think that some of the crew bring it up to Gimble that some of the jewelry they found is from like a specific area, and they do know that that is specifically where Norkruuth does most of his slaving, um, capturing new slaves or taking on slaves. We haven't really discussed what actually goes into the process of slavery in this world, and we did talk about it not really being chattel slavery. So that is where he maybe, as a trader of peddler of flesh, he goes there and picks up slaves that he thinks he can sell better to Gimble or somebody else for a higher price. But he usually works in this specific area, and they notice that there's quite a bit of jewelry from that specific area, and it's kind of weird that it's here. So I think his sort of the idea of there's a fight of investment is that maybe there's Norkruuth's like doing something shady in the deal between himself and Gimble. They've like put that seed of distrust in there. I mean, and that's on top of Norkruuth already not being able to capture the water elemental. So I think that's going to have negative repercussions for us later if we meet up with these characters together. But we did learn that it's not above our head, so Leah's able to get in there. They're able to walk through this chamber instead of having to swim. But they still probably have their torches up high. I'm gonna guess it's probably somewhere mid-abdomen height water, maybe waist-ish. I guess maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit up to the torso, maybe the armpits, top of the armpits. But I think the whole point of doing the Oracle roll in the beginning was to figure out whether they were going to have disadvantage fighting in the water. So it's probably maybe midways. We're going to say that they're not going to have disadvantage for doing this fighting, which swimming would definitely give them. But at least in 5e, there's not really any hard and fast rules about how much water you get up to when it becomes difficult terrain, or at least not that I know of. It becomes impassable terrain. So they get down in this chamber. Let's give Leah a perception check. I guess I should have given her advantage on the last one, but I'll give her advantage on this one. Like I said, she's got a bunch of people with them. They've all got torches. Like, there's a bunch of people that are part of this. So the assumption is that they're always helping. All right. Well, she rolled a 17 on the die. That's an 18. All right, against a DC 14. So yeah, whatever's in this chamber, she definitely sees. Let's look for the contents. There's some sort of creature in here. Difficulty of an encounter 9, so average, so probably quarter. All right. So what kind of creature do we think is in here? We've kind of done the humanoid. We've kind of done the construct. Let's see. Let me do this. So we're down here at this bottom. We're down in the water. These guys attacked him specifically. Attacked the group specifically when she mentioned, or at least she's pretty sure when she mentioned the water elemental. So I think there's a high likelihood the water elemental's here. So let me see an elemental, because I don't want to fight the same stat block of the Myrmidon, because I feel like that's kind of pointless. She's got 24 people with her. They're going to murder the crap out of this monster. If that specific monster, if we were going to play that all out. So instead, I want to make it... I want to make it like a 1/4, if I can. They really could have used some more monsters in 5e. Well, at least in the new monster manual, we're supposed to have up to 500, and at least there's going to be monsters for each type that go all the way through the CRs, which we don't have and haven't had for the last... What? How many years have we had 5e now? When did 5e come out? 2008? 2009? No. God, I can't even remember when 5e came out. Anyways, I know it's been like a decade, right? Or maybe it came out in 2014. Almost 10 years, if not. And we don't have monsters for each type that can move through all the CRs, which makes it really difficult to make specific types of encounters without having to do a bunch of work on yourself, on your own as DM. But I wanted to put something that makes sense for underground or for caves, and see if we can just pick something we kind of like. I'd even do something that was forced, right? Okay. So kind of want something that's in this quarter. Oh, that's what I was going to do, filter. That's right. I was going to do this because I wanted to do an elemental, because I'm pretty sure that I'm just going to assume that this is the elemental we're going to deal with. We're going to be dealing with the Myrmidon. I'm losing my mind. There we go. Elemental. Alright, let me go. Choose that elemental. There we go. Because I don't want to use a method stat block. I guess a water weird is the easiest thing. It's in the monster manual. Let's see what the water weird looks like. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to make some augmentations to the stat block, but I think the stat block's going to work okay for us. I'm okay with the AC. I'm going to dumb down its hit points. I'm probably going to give it... okay. I don't remember what I did with the stat block for the Myrmidon, because I had a physical stat block for him. That's okay. 1, so they should probably have... what size is it? It's 10 plus... so it's going to have... So Water Weird's only going to have 11 hit points. And I'm just using that based off of my own sort of knowledge for that stuff. Gonna do 1d6 plus 3. Oof, that's a lot. Yeah. For damage, she cannot take one of those hits. Can take her out. That's a lot. All right. So yeah, that's it. So they're pretty sure that it's down in here. She looked. She probably sees it. Do they surprise it? Remember, this thing's already hurt too. You know, I'm gonna drop this down from 1d6 plus 1 to 1d6 plus 1. I don't want the thing to kill her in one shot. As a first level NPC, PC. At least let her have a chance to do something in the fight. No, I said that, but a crit could still take her out. Alright, so it has a dex of... Really? A dex of plus 3? Okay. Oh, I was going to roll surprise. Alright. Let's roll surprise. Oh, pretty sure that thing's surprised with the roll of a 2. Alright, so they're gonna get the jump on this thing. Which probably makes sense. This thing has blind sight, so it probably doesn't differentiate between like light levels or anything like that. It doesn't have like infravision or dark vision or anything. So they're gonna get the drop on it. It only has blind sight out to 30, so they probably see it a little bit as they're sort of like peeking their heads around the corner to kind of like look into the chamber. And they probably see that thing, and I'm pretty sure Leah's gonna be able to point it out. Oh yeah, that's the water weird. Okay. I dropped everything. I'm going to drop this full down to 1d6. But I am going to up its armor class to 16. Because I'm pretty sure that's what the Myrmidon's was to begin with. And again, I'm kind of fluctuating the numbers because I'm only going to do a fight with Leah rather than do a fight with 24 guys and Leah and Gimble and the monster. I could have given it some sort of weird saving throw, but that would still take too many. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay with what I've got. Alright, so she needs to roll a 12 or better to go first. She rolls an 11. Lovely, Leah. Thank you. Only trying to save your life. Alright, so the Water Weird... Oh, but they do have surprise, so they'll get one round to do something. I guess that depends. Does she know? No, she already did a bunch of checks on the... Because for some reason... it's not going to let me highlight that. Well, let me do if I do this. Yeah, for some reason, the water elemental has resistance to fire. Not cold. Fire. Yeah, it's a weird stat block. Yeah, and I feel like a bunch of the elementals in 5e work that way. And I'm like, why are the elementals not weak to the opposite elemental? It's a little weird. I think our music turned off. Let me do the fight and then I'll put our music back on, I think. So yeah, we get into this, we do the full fight. And the weird would go first, but she's going to do her. So Leo gets one thing to do. Obviously, she's probably going to cast a spell. She's already fought this thing, and she made a successful knowledge roll on it earlier. So she knows that something like Chromatic Orb or something like that isn't going to do much because it's not particularly vulnerable to anything. So I think she would probably... she might Ice Knife. She Ice Knife? Maybe. No, I think I'm looking at Ice Knife, and though that's nice, but fighting in only a one creature encounter is not as useful. So we're gonna stick with Magic Missile, and Magic Missile just does the thing. So it's definitely within my capabilities, within Leah's capabilities to kill this creature right out. You say that, but then you only do 7 points of damage with Magic Missile, and you're like, that's almost the minimum amount of damage I can do. So it's down to 4 hit points, so it'll get to go. So it's gonna swim its way up to Leah and give it an attack. 19 on the die is gonna hit every time. 2 points of damage. Okay. Not too bad. Not too bad. She did take 1 point of damage earlier, though. Ugh. All right, so the next attack could take her out easily. Doesn't even have to be a crit. Just a normal attack with high damage. Ooh. Is there anything special that happens with their thing? Oh, yeah. So she is grappled. And she's restrained. Oh, hey, thanks for the follow. Yeah, we're playing solo D&D. Yes, that is true. That is exactly what we're doing. We're doing a little fight right now, trying to figure out. We've been chasing down this water elemental for a couple weeks now. No, this is specifically a solo RPG thing. But thanks, I appreciate it. We do some other stuff on some other dives when we're streaming. So if you want to jump in there, we could definitely use a lot of input there. But specifically on this one, this is more of a show process. So we're in the middle of this fight. The water weird goes, slams Leah. Leah takes his damage. Leah gets to go again. Oh, but Leah's restrained. It's gonna be really tough for her. Oh no, I appreciate it. No, I'm perfectly happy talking to myself. No, but yeah, dropping reactions, any of that stuff's always great. And I may ask for input at some point when we're trying to make decisions and things like that. So yeah, during the fight, it comes to Leah. Leah's restraint. So, does Leah try to get a spell off? Does she try to take it down? She knows it's close to death. But she's going to have disadvantage if she tries to make an attack. So I think she will. So she's gonna, I guess, use cold damage because she already knows that it's resistant to fire for some reason. The giant thing of water is resistant to fire, but not cold or water damage, which is very strange. So she's gonna make that attack. Actually, it's a save. yeah. No, Leah's she is a bad bee for sure. So yeah, I think Frostbite they have to make a save. I don't think she has to make an attack roll, which would be clutch. I hope that's true. That would be clutch. What am I looking for? Oh, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, so it has to make a Constitution saving throw. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just to stop any sort of mitigate a little bit of spam. That's why we have slow mode on. That's it. Oh, you've never played D&D? That's gonna be great. Um, I'd love to say that this is the would be the easiest way to sort of get out the rules, but this is already a little bit modified. My idea is that hopefully, if you're interested in it, even if you don't have friends to play, you could do something like this. It's a lot of fun and relatively simple. So she can make this thing make a con save. So she is gonna jump in and gonna make that con save. Okay, what is Leah's? That's I'm looking for the water weirds. It has an okay con save. We'll see. We'll see. Rolled a 4 on the die. That definitely doesn't pass. So it's going to take all the damage from that from the frostbite. So it'll take 1d6, right? Yeah, takes 1d6, and then we'll have disadvantage on its next attack roll. It's cutting that off for some reason, but I know it's 1d6. All right, if I roll if we roll a 4 or better, this thing's going to die. That's a 2. That's not a 4. It's gonna get another attack. Oh, have I played Smite? I have not played Smite. I've seen it around a bunch, but I haven't actually played it. And actually, I don't think I even know that much about it. What sort of what's the sort of main appeal? I've seen it, but I don't know that much about it. What's sort of the main appeal for that? And on the weird, of course, it will make an attack on its turn. Leah's still restrained, so it would have advantage. Then it gets disadvantage, so it just gets a flat roll. Ooh, that's a 15. That'll hit. That'll hit. But luckily, it's only minimum damage. Okay, Leah's staying in the fight. Staying in the fight for now. She goes down from 5 hit points to 4 hit points. Ugh. All right, she's still restrained. She's still restrained. So I think, yeah, I think she's gonna do the same thing. I think she's gonna try to use that frostbite again. So that's a Constitution saving throw. That's a pretty good roll. Oh, if it meets, it beats, and it meets it exactly. That's 13 to 13. Dang. All right. Well, and unfortunately, Leah doesn't have anything else that's going to be useful for her here. All right. Oh, Smite's the MOBA. Okay, yeah, no, I remember that. Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely remember seeing that game when it in promo when it came out originally. MOBAs usually aren't my like competitive online only games usually aren't my cup of tea, but you know, it looks cool. I think I like it better than certainly off of Dota, which is sort of built off of the Warcraft, and those that are sort of built off of League, where there's such an expansive character list and everything's very very hyper competitive in it. It's just not the sort of game that I'm super interested in for relaxing, unfortunately. Let's see. We had Leah. Leah did her thing, and Leah's gonna get attacked by the water weird. She does not have a ton of hit points. This thing has the potential to just KO her right here. Oh, that's gonna hit. That's 13 on the die. Okay, I only rolled a 2, but probably can't take another hit, which is not good. Okay, she's still restrained too. Ugh. Oh yeah, what games do I play? Right now, I talked about this a little bit earlier on the stream, and I think it's some other streams. Right now, I've got a few. I've got Xenoblade Chronicles, the original one. I'm doing the upgrade on the Switch, playing through that a little bit. I've got Vampire Survivors. I've been playing. Finally got into it, and playing the newer Mass Effect remake trilogy. I played Mass Effect all the way through and Andromeda, and I figured I'd just, for a little bit of nostalgia, jump back in and play it over again. Uh, it reminds me that Mass Effect One is rough. I remember it being rough, and it is rough. It's a bit of a slog to get through. All right, it is Leah's turn. She's going to make an attack because that's the only thing she can do. Okay, let's see what she does. Gotta get that con save again. Missed the con save by 1. 9 plus 3, right? 9 plus 3 is 12. Her spell DC is 13. Oh, yeah. Okay, so it fails, so it's going to take the 1d6 damage. Fingers crossed. 5 out of 6 chance, but now that I've said that. No, that's a 6. All right, so she takes this with the help of Gimble and his crew. She takes down the water wheel Myrmidon once and for all. Kind of stuck into this bottomless little sunken cave here, in this back area. We finally finish off the Myrmidon. Try number 3. All it took was having 24 plus people with you. Oh, you don't play any of those games? Oh, yeah. No, I can definitely imagine, like, if you bounce off of the first Mass Effect. First Mass Effect's kind of rough. The second one is certainly much better. Both in the narrative and in the massive gameplay improvements over the first one. I do not miss having to use the rover. Even though they brought the rover back for some other stuff later on, but I definitely prefer non-rover play. But Leah and Gimble and his crew are able to take this thing down finally. Oh, there we go. Are able to take this thing down. We determined there was not any treasure in here. I think we'd go in through the bottom area just to check. I'll make a check to see if there's anything else in there, but I don't think there probably is. In that last room. There's not. So there's nothing really of note back there in this co-opted map. But they have the water elemental slain. They can collect. I guess that's a question. Does Leah try to collect the? Obviously, they got there first. They got there before Omer, and got there before Norkruuth. And I just did that because the water elemental ended up not being where they thought it was going to be. And since it's not there, obviously they were the first to get there because they can go in that direction. So they have slain the water elemental. Omer's not going to be happy about that. Omer wanted to keep the thing alive. And Norkruuth's not going to be happy about it because he was trying to get paid for it. That's actually a good question. Would Leah have tried to do non-lethal damage to it? No, I don't think so. This thing had her restrained. It was probably going to swallow her inside and suffocate her if it ever got another hit off. So no, I think they ended up just blasting this thing to smithereens. So she's not going to make the full money from it. She's not going to make the full money from it, but she will make some of the money. Ott will get her money. They'll get the money from Akari for getting Gimble and his crew out of here, which is what they were trying to do, originally hired to do. So they're going to get double paid, or 1.5 pay anyways. But the question I really have is Leah going to try to take this um, enchanted plate armor, even though it's probably corrupted? Actually, we know it's corrupted. But it may be worthwhile, at least maybe for study. I think I'm going to roll an oracle check for that, but I think it's extremely likely because it's an elemental thing, it's a research thing that's very much Leah's background as an academic sage. I think she's going to try to do this. I don't. The only thing so I'm not even going to roll the oracle roll. I'm just going to see if Gimble tries to stop her from doing that for some reason. I don't think he will. So I'm going to give her a persuasion check at advantage to do that with a relatively low DC. I think I'm going to make the DC. Well, let me roll, and then I'll. So I'm going to make the DC based off of that roll. I'm going to make it 11. So it's not very high DC. She has a bonus. She can probably convince him that it's cool for her to take it. That's 11 on the die. So yeah, she does. So she collects the. So we'll put that under here under her treasure as well. So we have the water Myrmidon. Because plate armor by itself is quite expensive. Leah is a cold-blooded killer. That is true. I don't think she really wanted to kill this thing. She wasn't against killing it, but she didn't probably set out to kill it. And I think she knows that that's going to make things more difficult with Omer, and she kind of needs Omer's help for her prime mission right now because we are definitely on a side quest. And she really needs Omer's help with that, but she just kind of screwed Omer over. But she also helped Omer before that. I don't know. It's gonna be a weird conversation when they get back to town. It's gonna be a weird conversation. All right, so they hop out of there. Let's hop back to our map. Pop. All right, so they've done here. I think they probably stop in at the hamlet to relax. Let's see, is anything happening in the hamlet? No. I think that's a no. Let me double check. We do know that they missed the festival because they were out roving around looking for this water elemental. So they missed the Equinox festival. Oh. No. Nothing's happening in town. Nothing of note. So they move into this little hamlet. They probably bed down for the night. I assume that. Let's see. I'm just gonna roll a flat check to see if Gimble's just gonna pay Leah now and just be done with it. He does. So he pays her. I forgot what it was. It was. Was I smart? Did I write it down? Was I that smart? I didn't write it down there. I can't remember what I said her payment was. I think they hired her per day, though, I'm pretty sure. And how many days did we go? So we did. So we did 4 and then paid off of 2. So she probably got 10 gold, which doesn't sound like a lot because it's not a lot, but 10 gold for 4 days of work isn't too bad. So she will be able to do that, and then she's kind of on her own to get back to town, probably. Oh yeah. Oh, thanks for stopping by. Have a good rest of your weekend. See you later, Omaski. All right. So yeah, that's sort of that'll give us all the way back to that'll get us sort of from there, and then really it's just a matter of time to getting back to the Oasis, which we'll do the hex for. Um, Actually, you know what? I'm gonna give myself a D20 roll. On the high end, she's gonna stay with. Um, Man, why am I suddenly keep forgetting his name? Gimble, Gimble, like the photography thing. Um, yeah. So on a high roll, she'll stay with Gimble. On low roll, she's gonna go on her own on the way back, which I think is a bad idea. Which is why I'm gonna try to roll high. Let's go. That's a natural 20. Yeah, she's like, nah, yeah, no, you're gonna take me back to town too. You're not gonna abandon me in this backwater hamlet. Yeah, and I think that's a good place. I think for us to end it. We went a little long today. We usually try to only stream for about 2 hours on Sunday, but I wanted to make sure that we got at least found the water elemental, and then we ended up finding it and taking care of it out here outside of this hamlet. So we're gonna rest in this hamlet. We've done that. And next time, Gimble and Leah are going to make their way back to Split Valley Oasis. She's going to collect her reward from Azaki. They may or may not run across Ott and or Omer or both. And then we're gonna have a moment, and we're gonna see what happens if that happens. Otherwise, it's probably gonna come up later. But I think that's everything. So we'll go ahead and hop back over. And like I said, I'll fix up the rivers and all that good stuff because we talked about that tool not being uh, super great in the current version of HexDML. Um, though it's still, as a program overall, as a web app, is great, and I cannot praise it enough. I really enjoy it. But yeah, I mean that's everything. I feel like we got a lot accomplished though. We went through a lot of stuff, and I do think I'm going to make that modification. We're going to drop the con save down to 1d4s instead of 1d6s for every hex, just to make it a little easier. We could always drop it to 3, I guess, but I wouldn't want to drop it down to like a d2. At that point, it just seems silly. But I think because the d6, I feel like it's almost there, and I think a d4 is going to get us there. I just feel like it's really killer when you have even with a con, an average con save of 12. When you roll a 5 or 6 on the die, that basically ensures that you're only going to be able to get through like 2 to 3, maybe 4 on a day. And I think maybe dropping that down to making it only a 1 through 4 per every hex we move through and every action we do will help a lot in that case. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much it for me. I'm not sure. Is there anything else we need to go over? I'm trying to think if there's something else I was meaning to mention. I can't. I'm not thinking of anything off the top of my head. Let me look at my notes. Okay. Yeah, well, no, that's pretty much it. I mean, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I really enjoy doing this stuff. We've been doing this for a little bit now. I guess we've been doing it for about a month and a half. Wow, it really goes by really quickly. I've really enjoyed it. We're gonna get to learn a lot more about Leah. We haven't learned a ton about Leah's like as a character yet. They've kind of gotten sidelined dealing with this water elemental thing, which I thought was going to be really like a one-off, maybe two-off sort of adventure, but it ended up being a multi-session adventure that we're just now not quite finished with. So we'll fix that up. She's going to have a weird conversation with Omer about her research, and we're going to figure out where to go from there. We may or may not get to that by the end of the next session. I'm going to say probably not, because we got to get all the way back to the Oasis first, which is probably going to take us a few days. But I mean, otherwise things are things are looking good as far as the adventure goes. I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm always happy when doing solo adventures. You get surprised a lot, and those surprises are always fun. Right? I didn't know we were going to need to dig so hard into the elemental side of our research, but it helps to sort of reinforce that it's Leah's specialty. That's why people come to her for it, even if though even though she has maybe not the greatest reputation based off of her previous work. But yeah. Again, if you enjoy this, drop a follow. You know, make sure that you're getting the notifications. That's the best way to get the notifications for the stream. You can also down below see that you can follow me on Twitter, and that's another good way. I try to make notifications on Twitter every time I stream, but not perfect, right? As well as figure out that's a good place to find out when I'm going to upload new stuff to DriveThruRPG. I've got a new thing that I'm about 80% of the way through. It's our little dungeon creation thing, which is what I was using to stock the dungeon we did this time. So that should be coming out relatively soon. Whenever, because I kind of work on that in my spare time in the middle. So yeah, you can jump over there. I have some other stuff that's already up on DriveThruRPG, and you can find it under the same name, Red Ragged Fiend. I have all that stuff is on DriveThruRPG is pay what you want. So I don't think that we should gatekeep the hobby due to economic background. So if you want to get it for free, you can take it for free. I appreciate any money you spend with it. I have a full other time job, so you don't need to worry about it paying the rent, but it helps me to sort of like buy gaming stuff, pay for the website, redragonfiend.com, and any sort of like new materials I do buy to help me sort of with the hobby and create new content for you guys. And if you are looking for other good sources, in addition to what you can download from DriveThruRPG, you can always go to the website, redragonfiend.com. That's a blog I've been working on for 10 plus years with a bunch of TTRPG advice. It's mostly Dungeon Master centered or Game Master centered, but there's good stuff in there for players too if you're just a player, or if you're really interested in doing solo stuff like I'm doing right now. I have a whole big post about it. As well as sort of resources to help you sort of build the character that's going to be successful for that. I think that's it. I don't think there's anything else that we need to really talk about. That's about it. So next time we'll pick up on the way back. We'll see if we run into Omer, if we run into Ott, and whether we do or whether we don't, we're gonna get back to Split Valley Oasis. We're gonna figure out what's going on with Harold, the dead librarian, and we'll go from there. But thanks for sticking around with me. I appreciate it. I've had a lot of fun. Hope you guys have fun too. We do this every Sunday. Make sure to follow and jump back on next time. And I'll see you guys next time. Have fun. Bye.